So we are going to, with that, I would like to invite Mino to start our sessions, and then we will invite the next speaker, and I will introduce the next speaker. Thanks.
Do you know, is there a pointer or something? Sure.
Yes. No.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. My name is Mino Han. Thank you, Trin, for your kind introduction. I am a Korean lawyer and an English lawyer, but not a Vietnamese lawyer. But I was privileged to write with Trin together a paper on consequential loss exclusion clauses and liquidated damages. What happens if Vietnamese law is applied or Korean law is applied? I like to compare that with an electrical device where you plug in different voltage or different codes. Sometimes Vietnamese law, sometimes Korean law, English law, it works. Sometimes it doesn't. And I want to explore with you today what it is that you need to think about when plugging in Vietnamese law or Korean law to a consequential loss exclusion clause. So, okay, yes, although I'm from Korea, I don't think now is the time for me to sing a song, but in the world of magicians and witches, we love the unlimited. Lawyers freak out, and people on the construction side, we want to know what our risk profile is. We want to know what's the limit of our liability. We freak out with unlimited. Can we do that with a contract? Yes, it's very, very common. Took an example, the FIDIC Construction Contracts 2017 version Red Book. If you look at it, 1.15, but you can find it in the 1999 version too. Limitation of liability, neither party shall be liable to the other party, and so on. Delay damages, liquidated damages provisions are very, very common. So we like to set our boundaries and draw the lines where the liability lies by way of a contract provision. Now, what if not English law, which is very familiar with the concept consequential loss, but Vietnamese law or Korean law is applied to these provisions? That's a thought experiment I want you to take to today. I have one hair dryer from Korea that I brought with me to Singapore. I live in Singapore now. And the hair dryer is 220 volts optimized. If I use an adapter in Singapore, 110 volts, somehow the wind is very weak. I don't know why. I think the voltage, something is not happening. It works, but not as strongly as it should in Korea. And so if you plug in something else, there may or may not happen something unexpected. Before I do that, I think it's important to understand what are the basics under Vietnamese law. Before we go into what can we exclude, what can be limited, I think what are the basics? in order then to look into what can be carved out, what can be agreed to be limited in a contract. The starting point is the Vietnamese Civil Code, and Chuyên educated me on these provisions. For instance, Article 13, compensation for loss or damage in the Vietnamese Civil Code, says individuals and legal entities whose civil rights are violated shall be compensated for all loss or damage, except where otherwise agreed by the parties or otherwise prescribed by law on loss or damage. That's the starting point. There's no cap on the liability provided that you prove it's actual loss. Actual loss is the starting point. Article 13, I have underlined this, also states, except where agreed otherwise by the parties, which means the Vietnamese Civil Code leaves room for the parties to carve out or agree on another regime than stated in the Civil Code. It could be a liquidated damages clause, could be limitation of liability clause, could be an exclusion clause. There is an express carve-out provided for in Article 13. Going into further detail, I think there's Article 361, which sets out a list of losses and damages that you can claim. Again, I'm not yet in the exclusion clause world. It's still the basics. Here it says, you look at subsection 2. Physical damage is actual physical losses which can be determined comprising loss of property, reasonable expenses to prevent, mitigate, or restore damage, and the actual loss or reduction of income. There's no mention of consequential loss or special loss, which I will come to. So the question is, when I agree on a consequential loss exclusion clause, for instance, as stated in FIDIC, how does that interact with the Vietnamese legal regime? Because there is no concept of consequential loss stipulated here. What does that mean at all? I thought it's helpful to quickly look at consequential loss in the English law world, so that we all get a feel as to where this concept, where this term is coming from. Consequential loss, also called indirect loss, refers to damage that is more far away than the direct loss, than the ordinary damage. It's a bit abstract, I know. Yeah, what is direct? What is more further away than direct? It's a bit abstract, but that's what English law says. It's a little bit conceptual. If that consequential loss or the more than remote loss, that stage 2 loss, that limb 2 loss, was foreseeable when the parties signed the contract, then that loss is considered recoverable. And it's very, very common to have an exclusion clause because it's too far away. We don't want to think about consequential loss. Just let's keep it to direct loss. It's the idea under English law. Now, again, whether the actual loss, damages, or reduction of income derived from the breach, the language in the Vietnamese Civil Code is the same or similar to consequential loss under English law, we don't know. So the starting point is, this is now becoming very theoretical, but the gist of what I'm trying to say is consequential loss, depending on how you understand it, depending on how you define it, if you define consequential loss in a way that fits with the Vietnamese Civil Code, then you could exclude consequential loss. So it's a matter of definition, or it's a matter of how you understand it. However, if you define consequential loss as something very broad, then that's not recoverable under Vietnamese law anyway. So you are excluding something that's not there anyway from the beginning. So you need to be very careful what is recoverable, what is claimable from the beginning, and then think about what can I carve out. Because the concepts do not fit each other, a careful definition of the concept consequential loss is highly recommended and very important. Now, the very smart, that's the summary of this slide. Now, the very smart people then think, okay, Mino, I got you. I will then do something smarter than you, which is I'm going to use the language in the Vietnamese civil code because it's already there, and I'm going to put that into the contract to exclude liability. So what I'm going to do is I am going to exclude recovery of actual loss or reduction of income. That language we have seen in Article 361 of the Civil Code. I'm going to use that. Can I do that? I have not seen a contract doing so, but in principle, I believe, or we think, it's possible. It has to be actual proven loss of income or actual reduction of income. That's the basics. But as long as that is carved out, that is excluded, it should be possible to carve that out. The second question you might think of, okay, using consequential loss may require a lot of definition. Using actual loss of reduction of income is a way to overcome this, but still a bit unfamiliar. What about loss of profit? What about excluding loss of profit? Now we are going into confusing territory again, because loss of profit is a concept where you see something similar in the Vietnamese commercial law. Oops, what is that? Civil code, commercial law, how do they interact? Take a quick look. In the Vietnamese commercial law, Article 302, damages, it states in subsection 2, the value of damages covers the value of the material and direct loss suffered by the aggrieved party due to the breach of the breaching party and the direct profit, we see the word profit, which the aggrieved party would have earned if such breach had not been committed. So it looks kind of similar to loss of profit, although it's caveated by the word direct, has to be direct profit. But it seems like, okay, loss of profit seems to be some kind of concept acknowledged in the commercial law, so we can use that. But there is a tension between the commercial law and the civil code. The commercial law has that concept, loss of profit or loss of direct profit, whereas the civil code, and I'm going to skip the details of this slide, the civil code is, just going back. Can we carve out loss of profit? Yes, it seems so under the commercial law. However, the civil code paves the foundation for the principle of remedies, which seems to be clashing with this. This is very theoretical, I know. The civil code says, I'm not going to read out the whole, the principle set out in Civil Code 419.2 says, compensation is aimed at restoring the benefits that the aggrieved party should have enjoyed if the breach had not occurred. It's not limited to direct, it's a bit broader than that. And so, loss of profit, that concept under the civil code seems to be broader than the narrow concept in the commercial law. And now, since we're in a construction conference, how does that all come into play when we have construction projects? The construction law, so the third law, so many C's, civil code, commercial, now the construction law provides clarity on this issue. It says you should prioritize, you should look at the civil code. That is the foundation for civil obligations and rights. And so long story short, when you have a loss of profit exclusion clause, to which the civil code applies, the broader civil code, again, it's advisable that you define what loss of profit is meant. Otherwise, it may not perfectly fit with the Vietnamese damages regime. So long story short, the concepts that you can find in the Vietnamese civil code, commercial law, construction law, and the terms that you see in very often used standard form contracts, you need to check whether they are compatible. And if they are not, you need to draw the lines to make them as compatible as possible. What if Korean law applies? Oops, the Koreans are very, yes, it's also a civil law country, so there's room for clash as well. Interestingly, exclusion clauses that we see in FIDIC, that we see in other standard forms, are in principle valid under Korean law because the starting point under Korean law for damages, which is the civil code, is coming from English law. So we all think, or for me, it's very common sense knowledge. Korean civil code is coming from the Japanese civil code during the occupation, and the Japanese civil code, end of 19th century, is coming from the German civil code. And so we think, okay, Korean law is the grandson, is the baby of German law. But in fact, the Japanese have done something very interesting in the 19th century. They have mixed and blended various laws that they thought would be most innovative to help the Japanese empire in the 19th century. And for damages, they have taken the English law position. They have plugged that in, Hadley-Baxendale, the ordinary loss and the consequential loss concept, put that into the Japanese civil code, and they called it ordinary loss and special loss. Korea has adopted that wholesale, and so consequential loss is understood to be the same, or almost the same, as special loss in the Korean civil code. So to improve clarity, to make it really clear, it would be better if the contract says special loss. And for people using Korean law, that could be a drafting tip to add, besides consequential or indirect loss, or special loss, to make it very clear. But consequential loss, the concept itself, is pretty much compatible with Korean law. And so no difficulties if you use Korean law. I have a whole sort of deck of slides about liquidated damages, and it's in the paper too, but I think another speaker will cover that in more detail. I'll pause here and just wanted to give you a thought-provoking idea, also some thought experiment. If you use other system and plug that together, be careful, because sometimes if you transplant an organ, a liver, into your body, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it takes time to work, and you need to be careful about that. Thank you very much.
We lost two speakers. Can you find our two speakers? Coming, please. I invite Dr. Hoa and Mr. Vu Lê Bằng coming on the stage, please. You want it? Okay, our second speaker today is Dr. Nguyen Thi Hoa. Dr. Hoa brings a different lens as an academic, expert witness, and an arbitrator. And she will take us straight into the most debated and still unresolved questions under the new law. Hopefully we can resolve today. With Mr. Bắc Thủy still here with us, have we really adopted liquidated damages? That is the questions that she raised in her paper.
Thank you so much. The kind introduction from Ms. Chính. So my presentation today regarding the question whether the liquidated damages mechanism according to Vietnamese law has been really adopted in the new law of Vietnam. And regarding this question, my presentation will focus on three fundamental issues. The first one, I would like to present the context of Vietnamese concession law before and after the enactment of the new law 2025. And then I also focus on the provision of the new law on liquidated damages to understand what the law stipulate precisely. And the last one is I also share some point of view about how can this LD clause can be applied according to the 25 concession law of the countries. First of all, in the context of Vietnamese law, I believe that a lot of experts here today, you understand, as Mino mentioned earlier, here understand well Vietnamese context. Before 2025 law, we have the concession law of 2014 and also modified 2020. However, both law consider that the concession contract is a civil contract. This is the reason why, in reality, in practice, some argue that this is civil contract. This is the reason why the civil code must be applicable to regulate any issue related to concession contract. And however, there are also other point of view. For people understand that the term or the nature, civil nature of concession contracts is only to confirm the equality of the party related to contract to any civil transaction in general, and not to exclude the commercial arbitration, commercial law of Vietnam to regulate the concession contract. This is the reason why, in reality, for all the issues are not regulated by the civil, the concession law. Some practitioners use civil code. However, some others use commercial law if there is any commercial entities to the contract. This is the reason why the new law 2025, the legislature act is, I think it is a significant point, saying that the new law continue to determine or to confirm that concession contract is a kind of civil contract. However, the law at one point to confirm that for any issue which is not regulated by the concession law will be regulated by the civil code. Even the law said that way. I'm still not sure if in the future this provision can exclude the commercial law application or not, because in the civil code there's still a provision on the order priority of law application. For example, this is the reason why at the moment I'm not sure to confirm definitively that the commercial law will not be applicable to conjunction contracts. But at least we can understand that now we can apply civil code to conjunction contract. If we apply the civil code for conjunction contract, how can we apply the LD clause? For example, in the conjunction contracts of conjunction law of 2025, Article 86.2, the law says that compensation for damages shall be determined on the basis of actual damages, predetermined damages level corresponding to the breach conjunction contract obligation and degree of breach. So here we can understand that at least the new law confirm the validity and the legal nature of the LD clause according to Vietnamese law. This is a compensation for damages clause and not a penalty clause as before, because before this law, some court still understand that the LD clause has the nature of a penalty clause. This is the reason why the court or the arbitral tribunal will apply the cap of 8% for penalty according to the commercial law. However, if we have this law of 2025, we can understand that the LD clause is not a penalty clause at all. Now it must be understood as compensation for damages clause or nature. So if we understand in that way, whether or not with this kind of provision, whether or not or how can we apply this provision? I think this question is really important if we regard this case in Vietnam. Before the enactment of the 2025 law, in this decision of the People Court of Ho Chi Minh City, there is a conjunction contract between parties in which the party agreed to kind of fine. The first one, they call penalty with cap 0.2% of the total contract value. And the second one is a precise amount of 200 billion Vietnam dong for each day of delays. Regarding this provision, the Vietnamese law, the Vietnamese court determined these kind of the five different nature. For the first penalties, for the first amount, 0.2%, the court say that this is a penalty clause, penalty amount. And this is the reason why this must follow the commercial law. The limit of commercial law is 8% of breach obligation of the contract. However, for the second point, second kind of fine, for the court, this is a kind of LD clause. This is, and however, for the court, this amount must be compared with the actual damages. And the most important point in this case is that the actual damages proven is greater than the LD clause, the LD amount, the predetermined amounts. However, the court only accepts the predetermined amounts by the contract and not for own damage, for own actual damage. So if this is the case, we can come back, for example, come back to this clause, this provision of the law. My question is, how this predetermined damages and the ordinary actual damages can be applied? Can we apply simultaneously both this compensation for damages mechanism, or we only apply one? with the comma before the predetermined term, we should understand this comma as the term and or at the term or. So if we understand this end, this means that we can apply, according to Vietnamese law, at least three mechanisms to cover any damages arising from any violation of conjunction contract. However, if we understand that we only have the right to opt either actual damages or predetermined damages, in this situation, we have only two. First is penalty and second is compensation for damages. So, if so, how about the foreign country apply the LD clause in relation to other compensation for damages or other mechanisms have the same nature? When I make a comparison with other countries in the world, for example, I think some countries, for example, the UK, where I think the LD clause origin. In the UK, this country apply only one mechanism for any violation of contract. This is LD clause, and even the term that labor is LD clause. However, for the court, this clause also have a compensation for damage nature. And for the Hong Kong have the same policy as that of the UK. And for the France, for example, France is a civil law country at Vietnam too. And according to French law, there are also two mechanisms may be acceptable. First is penalties and second is compensation for damages. And for the French court, they see the LD clause as a penalty. However, for the French court, the penalty clause of French law has the compensation for damages nature and not for penalty for fine nature, for example. This is the reason why, if there is a predetermined damages clause, in this situation, the court will apply this clause, and the party only have the right to claim all the damages if they can prove that this actual damages has not been predetermined or overseen in the LD clause. This means the possibility to apply simultaneously at least two mechanisms is rare. It's rare. According to French law, even the French recognize both penalty and compensation for damages as Vietnamese law. This is the reason why in the future, I hope that if Vietnamese court apply their new law of Vietnamese conjunction law, I think we should consider also the theory of LD law in foreign countries and also to find a suitable solution for Vietnamese context. This is my point of view, because to be honest, at the moment, I cannot have a firm argument or conclusion to say that how can we apply this provision. And here I see also Mr. Thuy here. He also expert in this provision, I think. And subsequently, I hope to hear his point of view to explain in more detail about this provision of new law of Vietnamese law. And this is all my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Hoa, for the very interesting presentation. It's quite complicated, isn't it? Finally, we have Mr. Bang, Lê Vũ Bang. Bang is a partner head in the Vietnam practice of Nishimura Associates with over 20 years experience. And notably, he was the first Vietnamese lawyer when he first joined 20 years ago, right? What I admire most about Bang is his commitment to continuous learning. Despite a very busy and demanding practice, he has pursued not only one but two LLM degree, one in Korea and one in the US, and now undertaking a PhD. So yes, we say the best for the last. Bang will help us to step back and connect the dots, looking at how the new developments are shaping the broader internationalization of construction contract of Vietnam, as his title of the paper. Thank you.
What happened? Okay, can we start from the first slide? Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Bang, and thanks so much for the excellent introduction from Madam Ching. Actually, I have been with my current firm, Nishimura Asahi, an law firm in Vietnam, for 16 years. It's not 20 years. Yes, and also I have two LLMs in US. It's not only one. Just to share further. And I think also thanks so much for the excellent presentation from my co-speaker, Dr. Hoa, and also Mino Han. Mino Han, I'm very impressive about the knowledge of Vietnamese law. You know, I know you refer the single provision of civil code, commercial law, also the construction law. So I'm concerned what should be the room for me to to provide further in my speech. Yeah, but just before I delve into my presentation, I just have a small comment relating to the presentation from Mino Han about the consequence losses. Yeah, I understand under the common law, like in the US jurisdiction, right? So in order to recoverable, you need to have foreseeable, right? For the consequence damages or the loss, yeah, you need to have a foreseeable, meaning by the time you sign the contract, you already know in advance, yeah, the cost is going to be occur, yeah. So that's my understanding. And for Dr. Hoa, I think the concept of the LD is not starting from the judgment, yeah, like a 2022, right? Like actually also I issue two new nester regarding the liquidated damages, yeah, under my firm name. And also I refer, it's not only about the judgment, it's also about the under the circular 03, yeah, 2023 already mentioned about the concept of the liquid damages, but there's no further elaboration, yeah. So maybe Mr. Trần Bắc Thủy maybe can have comments later on. So now, yes, I just want to introduce about my topic, about the internationalization of the construction contracts under the new construction law. We have 6 parts. Yeah, introduction. The second part is about language. The third part is about the applicable law, and the fourth part, construction risk allocation under the new law, and also the regulation of the international dispute resolution mechanism under the new contract law, and also the last part is the conclusion. The background of the new construction law, perhaps all of us already listen in the morning section. Yeah, already they introduced about the construction contract under the new construction law. Here I just want to emphasize or highlight 3 points about for the issuance of the new construction law. We understand here right now in Vietnam we have a rapid or very quick growth on the infrastructure. If those foreigners you came here the first time, perhaps you a little bit surprised, or I'm not sure if it's scary if we have a flood of the motorbike, right? And I'm not sure if you're very confident to cross the streets here in Vietnam. But yeah, don't worry. Right now the infrastructure is on the way to develop. Yeah. So I hope next time it will be better. And also, you see right now the participation of the foreign portion into the construction work in Vietnam is increasing. Yeah. And also due to the lending structure, right? Project finance relating to the construction projects. So normally, like based on the ODA or state-owned funding projects, the international agreements require adopt of the international contract form like a FIDIC. So that's why it is increased about the requirement for adopt the international norm into the construction contract here in Vietnam. So those backgrounds, and it make the issuance of the new construction law, and including the construction contract in Vietnam become more international. The key reform here and make the construction contract in Vietnam more international. I pick up 4 points. The first one is about the language. Yeah, right now under the new construction laws, they allow for to select the foreign language as a prevailing or the controlling language. And also the application of the categories of the contract as like a civil contract or the commercial contract, and under the applicable law of civil code or the commercial code. And Dr. Hoa mentioned already, but I will pick up only the examples and the consequences, the problems about the confusing about the application of 2 laws in the past or in the current construction law, and also the moving forward. So what would be the improvements? And also mention the risk allocation. Perhaps I will delve into more deep regarding the performance security instead of the LD, because LD already we mentioned fully cover or in detail by Dr. Hoa already. And the last is one of important is the regulation of international dispute resolution. Yeah. So first, the language of the regime reform. Yeah. Just to share in Vietnam, actually for the arbitral awards in Vietnam already set aside, there's 1 or 2 set aside due to the language issue. Yeah. So the language is also very important. I believe under the current law, like the construction law, we have requirement the contracts must be in Vietnamese. Yeah. And the additional language, including the foreign language, is permitted. Yeah, but it's silent as to the controlling language. Yeah, so open for interpretation. Yeah. And to my observation, it is somehow implication like the Vietnamese language should prevail. Yeah, of course, others may not agree, but without the new provision right now under the new construction law mentioned clearly, okay, in the case the construction contracts involving the foreign parties, and then the foreign language can be like select as a prevailing or the controlling language. Yeah, simple wording, but very important effect. Yeah, that's my understanding. But of course, still the Vietnamese language still required under the new contract. Just bear in mind. So for the FIDIC contract, right, it's written in English, right, and also for some kinds of the international treaty, normally we refer to the foreign language, and also when we go to the dispute stage, I'm not sure if you agree, but here in Vietnam, to my observation, here come to the construction project or construction contract, there's a dispute. So all the construction mostly have the dispute. So later on, for the interpretation, the language prevailing is very important. Yeah, it's decide about the proceeding for the by the court or by the arbitration. Yeah. So right now the clearly the clarification about the prevailing language can be the foreign language. I think very important. But still, we remember in Vietnam, we still require for the Vietnamese as the requirement for the language under the construction contract. Yeah. Do we understand this like perhaps it's still there's a supervision from the regulatory authorities in Vietnam. Yeah. And the next point about the applicable laws of the construction contracts, and Dr. Hoa made excellent like a head up already about like the confusing under the current construction law about whether the construction contract is governed by the civil code or commerce law, or in other words, the construction contracts categorized as a civil contract or the commercial contract. Yeah. Because it has come to the problems. We have a different provision relating to the construction contract term or the contents, yeah, like a statute of limitation and also penalty. Different law have a different provision, different threshold. For the civil code, for the statute of limitation, we do have only like 3 years, yeah, for initiate not suit or for the arbitration sitting, and but under the commerce law only 2 years, yeah. And but meanwhile under the law on commercial arbitration, yeah, it's only like allow like 2 years unless the substantive law of the dispute provide otherwise. Yeah. So here we can see, yeah, that's okay. The demonstration of what I said just now. Relating to statute of limitation, yeah, if like we are not clear about the which law finally govern the construction contract, and then it's confusing about the timeline for to initiate a lawsuit, 2 years or 3 years. So under the new construction contracts already mentioned clearly, the applicable law of the construction contract, if not governed under the construction contract, should be the civil code, right? So meaning yes, it's a 3 year going to applicable, but still, okay. Right now remain one point unclear is under the law on commercial arbitration, they still mention 2 years, 2 years, unless otherwise provided by specialized law. So the concept of specialized law right now is what? Like it's going to regulate or specify under the construction law, or it's still okay? The 3 year regulated under the civil code still applicable. Yeah. So perhaps like it's an open issue. I would like the audience or on the distinguished guests here maybe have a comments later on for that point. And also the penalty clause. Yeah. So under the civil code, the penalty no cap. Okay. The commerce law, Dr. Hoa already made clear, is the cap or the threshold is the 8%. Under the construction contract, it's a 12, right? But yeah, limited to the state-owned projects. Yeah. So right now, under the new construction law, still they require like a 12% for state-owned project. Yeah. Meanwhile, the construction contract is applied by the civil code. So may I understand that like for the private construction project, right? The contract, the construction contract governing the private funded project, construction project, can the party free to agree on the threshold of the penalty? Can it go beyond 12 or 8%? Yeah. I do believe right now that the government trying to build up to issue the draft decree on the construction contract. In the morning, I also saw the material sharing. Yeah. And also in the recent seminar organized by the Ministries of Construction, I attend, and I heard some opinions from the if I'm not wrong, yes, like from the construction association, yes, they mentioned about still required to lower the cap of the penalty, and still even right now it's clear the construction contract applied by the civil code, but still they refer to okay, so the cap should be 8% based on the commercial law, yeah, and then there's some just concern about the 12 is too high threshold for the construction contract. Yeah. So here's the open question, like whether or not the private contract can be agreed by the party beyond 12 or beyond 8. Yeah. And the last point for the international contract, for the substantive issue about the contractual risk allocation, I think it's very mentioned here. It's also already mentioned there 2 points. The first for liquidated damages. Yeah. I here just okay wrap up or summarize what Dr. Hoa already mentioned. So it requires just a literary meanings. Yeah, require 3 portions, right? First is about the it's recognized as a predetermined damages, liquidated damages, right? And the first portion is the other element is actual loss, and the pre-agreed amount and degree of breach. So I understand Dr. Hoa already raised a question, like it is like the exclusive remedies in the contract. Can the party still agree in addition to like liquidated damages? Can the party recover the ordinary compensation, right? And also, can the party recover the penalty or not? Because in Vietnam we have 3, right? Right now, in addition to the introduction of the concept of the liquidated damages, and so we still have existing like the actual compensation and also the penalty. So right now the question is whether or not 3 remedies can be recovered at the same time or not. Yeah. So if not, why? Yeah. And one very interesting question I may not answer as well. Like they require about the degree of breach, right, or the degree of the violation. So in actual contract dispute, you see the forced contribution from both parties. It's not only one party, right? Like a 50% easier. Like what if, like the claimant contribute the fault like a 40%, but the the respondent is 60%. And how are you going to decide? Yeah, or all the agreement under the liquid damage going invalid or not? Yeah. I think there's another question. Yeah. So here's the actual losses and the pre-damages. Yeah. So can this like understand the actual limit, meaning the reasonable list, or something beyond? Yeah, I think that's also a question for us to think about. For the performance security, under the decree 37 and also the current law of construction, yeah, it's very strict and they require like strictly read by the law, and somehow it's not commercial, yeah, according to the comments from a lot of experts. So to recover, to fix that shortcomings under the new constitutional law, they mentioned very flexible scheme and make it more commercial, and so totally subject to the party agreements, yeah. And under the new draft decree, I understand from the presentation and also for the expert make contribution to the draft decree. Also, they try to open up or like make flexible relating to the mechanism for performance security and also some other liability for the contract as well. So in conclusion, for the risk allocation of contractor of the contract right now is under the new scheme or new regime is more flexible and is subject to the party agreements. The last point here is formally right now recognize about the international dispute mechanism, yeah, for settlement the dispute arising from the contracts. And we understand we have like a mechanism for the negotiation and mediation, arbitration, or court, right? So arbitration or court is not both, of course. And previously, under the decree 37, under the language, I understand is the negotiation is compulsory, but yeah, I think right now it's already fixed under the new construction contract. Yeah, under the decree 37, also like a DIB or DIAB, right? Still very confusing. I understand, like because it issued before the decree on the commercial mediation 2027 in Vietnam, and then it confused ADB as mediation. So I don't know, like also under the decree 37 mentioned clearly, okay, the like after 38 days, 28 days, if the decision of the DIB there's no challenge from the party and it come into binding. So how going to enforce? That's one also I think is a questionable in Vietnam. Yeah. So right now under the new contract, yeah, they allow adopt the international dispute resolution model. Yeah. So we understand it's extend to the DIB and DIAB here as well. And under the new draft, the draft decree on the contract, I also mentioned about the opinions from the expert. Also, most of them to agree. Yeah. Also mentioned about the international mechanism, that particularly relating to the DIB or DIAB. Yeah. Yeah, so the last the conclusion point here is yeah, it's very encouraging and positive improvement for under the new construction law under Vietnam. Still, we retain the civil law jurisdiction. Yeah, like Minohan mentioned, it's similar to Korea or Japan. Yeah, but we adopt the international practice and norm of the contract into our new constitutional law. And yeah, I think that's we are very happy and pleased for that amendment or the new provision under the constitutional law. But still, we need to like have a further observation. Also need to like follow up with the issuance of the a bunch of the decrees guiding the constitutional law. At the same time, we see about the the court interpretation relating to certain issue we mentioned earlier in my presentation. I think I would like to conclude my presentation today. And thanks so much for listening. And yeah, best wishes for all of you. Yeah, thank you a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bang. I think that I will have to move the chair for the panel discussion. Yeah. Can I ask and confirm with the organizers how much time do we have for the panel discussion? What time will we need to finish our session? Because we start late. Organizers? Còn mấy phút nữa em? Em ơi, còn mấy phút nữa? Hả? Còn 2 phút nữa hả? Only 2 minutes. Oh. We only start at 2 o'clock, right? So can we have some minutes for the discussion, or we have audience? What do you want? Do you want the panel discussion? Oh, Dr. Nassim, please. Yep. Sure.
You say you've got a project, say, $10 billion. Let's exaggerate, let's say it's for the Olympics or World Cup or football company, in Ho Chi Minh City in 2040. If you cap the liquidity damages, what is the incentive for the contractor to speed up once they reach the cap? No incentive. So I want to know your thoughts on this idea of capping.
Do you want to take it? So Dr. Wang will take that one.
Thank you so much for your question. To be honest, I also raised this question too. For example, when I study the UK law, I understand that the history of the Arabic clause, why, according to the UK law, any penalty clause will be invalid. And this is the reason why people imagine a new mechanism. They didn't use the penalty, but they use the term liquidated damages because they use the term damages to, to confuse. However, when applied this kind of clause, the UK court continue to understand that this kind of clause has a compensation for damages nature, and how people have to, why people have to set up this kind of clause. And for the UK clause, they say that this because in reality, there exists some situation in which people cannot prove actual damages. This is the reason why it is necessary for the party to have a such kind of clause. So if you ask me what is the significance of this kind of clause, I think there may be the situation of congestion sector, because there's some situation that people, first of all, it could be difficult to prove the actual damages, and also it takes too long. It takes too long to prove. Whereas according to the theory of congestion law is that pay first and argument after. This is the reason why the LD clause appears.
I think the question was not so much about an LD clause itself. It was about a cap. It could be 10%, 20%. What if the delay has hit the cap, and what incentive or what punishment would the contractor have to move forward? Good question. I think to balance that risk, the employer is given very commonly an on-demand bond, which is almost like a check. It's like a strong weapon to balance out that risk. Does it cover the whole risk? I don't think it does. But yeah, ultimately, calling the bond and terminating the contract would be some countermeasures that the employer could push back against the contractor to let them continue working. But it's a good point. One other aspect, I think, relating to what Dr. Hua has said, is the question of, is the LD clause the exclusive remedy? Or if you hit the cap, can you then resort to general damages, which depending on the law could be different. Under English law, you think you hit the cap, that's the end of the world. But maybe under different law, you still have general damages available. So that's something that you would have to look at depending on the governing law.
I just ask one point to the explanation of me know true is this is the reason why according to the law of most countries in the world, the law attribute to the court or arbitral tribunal the power to modulate the pre-estimated damages if this amount exceed the actual damages. So this is the reason why yes, you are a reason. The problem is what is the cap and why this is 12% or 10%, for example.
Just a quick add that, of course, excellent answer on that from my course because, yeah. So just understand that right now under Vietnamese law is a new concept, right? So we need to observe about the further interpretation or guidance from the authority. Also, we see about the court cases and how we're going to apply in practice. But the cap, yeah, I think it can be acceptable. Yes, there's no limitation for that. And I would say it's depend on the risk allocation of the party when they try enter into the contract, and if they have the cap, perhaps it's easier for them to estimate the cost and also about the risks and also about the costs. So I think the cap is better than the minimum. Yeah, about the LD. Yeah, a lot of you perhaps you would like to say. Yeah, thanks a lot.
I think that from my understanding, the our session is a 1.5 hour, and we start at 10 to 10. 150. So I think that we should have around maybe 5 or 7 minutes. And I think that we have some burning questions that we would like to ask, so that when Mr. Park Thuy is still here, for the benefits of everyone. Okay. 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 So we will have both Vietnamese and English. Okay. The burning question that Mr. Hoa, Ms. Hoa, and all we have is: can LD coexist with claim or extra damage under the new law, or should they be treated as an exclusive remedies, given the concern, given the structure of the wordings of the case? Chị hỏi đâu.
Dạ. Em nghĩ câu này anh Thủy trả lời sẽ chính xác hơn á, là chúng ta sẽ áp dụng cùng một lúc là cả phạt vi phạm bình thường với lại LD clause cùng một lúc được không anh? Với cách quy định như vậy.
Còn mấy phút nữa để em biết em nói.
Không sao. I think that if we agree, we can have around 7 minutes. So Park Thuy can explain.
7 phút đúng không chị? Em hết 7 phút là
Because Mr. Park Thuy, who is the one of the person who play a significant role to write this provision, I think this is the reason why we would like to hear his opinion about the LD clause.
Anh trả lời cho khán giả hay là trả lời cho panel? Thế cho phép em quay xuống khán giả thì nhá. Trước hết là cảm ơn chị Trinh với cả các anh chị trong panel đã dành cho tôi một cái vinh dự là được nói cái điều này đối với lại tất cả các quý vị trong khán phòng hôm nay. Thì trước hết thì rất là mừng vì có những cái góc chia sẻ khác nhau, đứng trên các quan điểm khác nhau. Ví dụ quan điểm của các anh chị trong panel về cái chuyện mà áp dụng luật. Trước hết thì trước khi mà vào cái chuyện là chúng ta có áp dụng cái bồi thường thiệt hại với cả cái phạt, nó là độc lập hay là gắn liền với nhau, hay nó là một, thì cho phép tôi chia sẻ một cái nội dung trước, đấy là liên quan đến việc mà băn khoăn cho hai cái bài trình bày của hai diễn giả người Việt, đấy là cái chuyện mà luật thương mại. Thì xin thưa tất cả các quý vị là khi làm cái luật xây dựng này thì bản thân tôi là người mà cũng đã từng là tham gia nhiều cái vụ kiện tại trọng tài với vai trò trọng tài viên, có vai trò là chủ tịch hội đồng trọng tài, thì cũng nhận thấy là đúng là mình có những cái luật mà quy định ra áp dụng. Ví dụ người ta tranh luận nhau là hết thời hiệu khởi kiện rồi, không áp dụng luật thương mại hay là luật dân sự, rồi là cái chuyện mà phạt 8% hay là tối đa 8% hay là 12% cái kép mà chúng ta đề cập đến. thì cũng là một vấn đề. Và vì thế mà khi mà xây dựng cái luật xây dựng năm 2025 này, luật xây dựng vừa rồi, thì mình đã có quy định tại cái khoản 2 điều 4. Nếu mà mọi người đã nghiên cứu rồi thì mọi người có thể nghiên cứu khoản 2 điều 4 của luật. Thì trong đó đã quy định rất rõ là những nội dung mà chưa được quy định cụ thể trong luật xây dựng, luật đấu thầu, luật PPP thì phải áp dụng bộ luật dân sự. Điều đấy đồng nghĩa với việc là chúng ta xóa bỏ cái quan điểm là áp dụng cái luật thương mại vào trong cái quan hệ của hợp đồng xây dựng. Và hợp đồng xây dựng nó là cái gì thì nó đã định nghĩa rất cụ thể ở trong cái quy định của luật mình, là nó có các loại hợp đồng xây dựng đã được kể ra trong đó. Mặc dù nội hàm thì nó sẽ được quy định chi tiết hơn ở trong cái nghị định, nhưng nó đã liệt kê ra, ví dụ hợp đồng xây dựng thì có hợp đồng thi công, hợp đồng tư vấn, rồi các loại hợp đồng ở trong đó nó đã định hình ra trong cái tính chất công việc của cái hợp đồng xây dựng. Và vì vậy thì tôi nghĩ là nó cũng đã khá là rõ ràng trong cái việc mà áp dụng luật. Và từ cái việc mà chúng ta xác định cái việc áp dụng luật đó thì chúng ta ra tất cả những vấn đề khác phải giải quyết. Ví dụ kép nó là 12 hay là 8 thì mọi người cũng sẽ tự trả lời được, đúng không ạ? Rồi thời hiệu khởi kiện nó là 2 hay là 3 thì chúng ta cũng tự trả lời được.
Hello, xin lỗi, chắc là xin Bắc Thủy cho chờ một tí để nói lại cho mấy cái người diễn giả, mấy người có dịch. Ok, thanks.
Cái vấn đề mà trọng tâm là đấy là cái câu hỏi mà chị Trinh rồi các diễn giả đặt đến tôi, đấy là cái cơ chế mà áp dụng là bồi thường thiệt hại và cái cơ chế phạt ấy. Trong luật xây dựng thì cơ chế phạt, nếu các quý vị ở trong phòng này mà đọc cái luật ấy thì mình sẽ thấy là phạt ấy, ngoài mức phạt, trong luật nói ngoài mức phạt thì chúng ta phải chịu bồi thường thiệt hại theo quy định của hợp đồng, theo thỏa thuận hợp đồng. Và cơ chế bồi thường thiệt hại thì nó có 2 cơ chế mà chúng ta cũng sáng nay tôi cũng đã trình bày, và vừa xong thì các diễn giả cũng đã trình bày lại, cũng đã nói thêm, nhấn mạnh thêm và phân tích các khía cạnh từ góc nhìn của mọi người. Như vậy rõ ràng là chúng ta thấy rằng là ngay trong luật, ngôn từ của luật, nói thật từ ngữ Việt Nam đôi khi dịch sang tiếng nước ngoài có khi là sẽ hiểu một cách khác. Giống như nước ngoài, tôi cũng không phải là người nghiên cứu về tiếng Anh lắm, nhưng mà ví dụ penalty với cả damages nó khác nhau cái gì, thì đôi khi bảo là trùng là một thì ở tiếng Việt thì đôi khi dịch sang nó cũng rất có thể là nó trùng là một. Nhưng mà với cơ chế của luật xây dựng thì 2 cơ chế này nó tách biệt. Cơ chế phạt tôi được vẫn nôm na rằng là nhiều lần tôi nói chuyện với mọi người, tôi nói là cơ chế phạt nó là cái roi mà người cha người mẹ treo ở trên tường ấy. Nếu mà ông vi phạm là tôi phạt. Và phạt, đã nói đến phạt thì vì nó là phạt nên nó có cái mức giới hạn nhất định, chứ không phải phạt thì đánh nó chết thì tôi toi. Thế nên là người ta mới định ra cái mức phạt là tối đa có 12% của cái phần giá trị, phần hợp đồng bị vi phạm thôi. Cũng như là luật thương mại người ta định ra là cái phần nghĩa vụ bị vi phạm. Nhưng cái phần nghĩa vụ bị vi phạm hay cái phần hợp đồng bị vi phạm này không chỉ luật xây dựng và luật thương mại đều có tranh luận trong giới luật sư, trong xã hội, thậm chí trong thẩm phán. Thế nào là phần bị vi phạm? Có những cái nó là gắn kết, có những cái nó có thể tách biệt được, có cái không tách biệt được. Và vì vậy chúng ta rất khó để phân định cái câu chuyện này. Thì đấy là cái chắc là câu trả lời của tôi đối với nội dung đấy thì nó khá là rõ ràng rồi. Phạt và cơ chế bồi thường thiệt hại là 2 cơ chế khác nhau. Cái vấn đề thứ hai trong xoay quanh câu chuyện này đấy là cái chuyện là cái phạt, mức bồi thường ấy thì nó có thể tính theo bồi thường thực tế, cũng có thể tính theo bồi thường theo cái định trước. Có câu hỏi đặt ra là cái này nó tính là cả hai song hành hay là từng cái một, hay chỉ được chọn một trong 2 phương pháp. Bản gốc của cái luật này lúc mà tôi làm thì định dự kiến là hoặc, có hẳn chữ hoặc đấy. Nhưng về sau xét đi xét lại thấy rằng là trong hợp đồng xây dựng ấy, thì nó có rất nhiều cái hợp đồng mà thậm chí là quy mô lớn và đặc tính kỹ thuật của mỗi một cái phần này nó khác nhau. Tôi nói ví dụ như này, vi phạm về tiến độ chẳng hạn, thì người ta có thể phạt theo một cái mức định trước nào đó. Ví dụ ông phạt chậm tiến độ của tôi 10 ngày là chi phí tài chính của tôi hết cả này rồi mất doanh thu cái này, tôi có định ra cái mức phạt, mức bồi thường tương ứng với nó. Nhưng có những cái việc nó vi phạm mà tôi không thể nào tính bằng cái mức là tỷ lệ phần trăm đấy được, tức là định trước được. Rồi ví dụ như là cái chất lượng sản phẩm không thể dùng được, tôi phải vứt đi. Vứt đi thì ví dụ ông mang cho tôi một cái máy mà tôi không thể làm gì được thì tôi vứt đi ông phải thay thế. Tôi thay thế thì tôi phải, có khi tôi với ông phải thỏa thuận với nhau là thiệt hại thực tế là bao nhiêu, ông phải trả tôi bấy nhiêu. Hoặc là ông thay thế tôi, hoặc là ông trả tiền tôi mua cái khác, đúng nhỉ? Thì cái ý nghĩa của nó trong đấy, và chắc hẳn là mọi người đọc thì thấy cái phần đuôi nó còn có nhiều người cũng có bình luận và cũng có trao đổi với tôi là cái mức phạt đấy nó phải tương ứng với cái loại vi phạm là một, cái mức độ vi phạm trong cái loại đấy thì nó có mức độ vi phạm. Ví dụ như khi tôi đàm phán cái nhà máy lọc dầu Dung Quất 1, 4 và 23, lúc bấy giờ nhà máy lọc dầu đầu tiên của Việt Nam và giá trị hợp đồng lúc bấy giờ 1, 4 nó cỡ khoảng 1,56 tỷ, lúc bấy giá trị vô cùng lớn ở năm 2006. Thì người ta đưa ra là ví dụ như năng suất cái công suất của nhà máy đấy làm đạt đến 95%, thì ông phải, nếu ông nó chỉ đã chạy được đến 95%, không thể đạt được 100%, ông có nhận nhà máy đấy không? Ông không nhận thì ok, bỏ. Thì ông phải chạy, nếu ông chạy 95% thì ông phải chịu phạt cho tôi bằng cái này tiền. Thì người ta có những cái mức độ khác nhau và với các cái loại hình hay vi phạm khác nhau thì người ta định ra các mức phạt. Cái vấn đề thứ ba xoay quanh câu chuyện này tôi muốn trao đổi với tất cả mọi người ấy. Không có đồng hồ nhắc em sợ nói quá. Đấy là cái kép. Sáng ngày thì tôi cũng đã chia sẻ và anh Dương cũng hỏi tôi một cái câu là luật quy định chi tiết quá thì có làm giảm cái tính linh hoạt của các chủ thể hay không? Nhưng vừa rồi mình ngồi đây bàn với nhau thì luật không quy định, đôi khi cũng lại để cho các chủ thể cũng lại cãi nhau. Vì sáng nay tôi có nói đến một cái thuật ngữ, cái việc mà balance giữa hai sức mạnh của hai chủ thể, một ông mạnh hơn thì ông sẽ áp đặt ông kia, về luật có điều phối quan hệ đấy hay không? Và như Hoa có trao đổi ấy, thì nhiều quốc gia và Việt Nam chắc cũng vậy thôi, không phải là mình thích thỏa thuận cái mức đấy là bao nhiêu, áp đặt mức đấy là bao nhiêu, nó đến mức mà vô lối ông có thể kiện ra tòa để tòa người ta phán xử rằng là cái việc đó, cái thỏa thuận đấy của ông nó vô lối, thì ông dùng một cái sức mạnh nào đó ông thỏa thuận, hoặc thậm chí là ông không dùng sức mạnh mà có khi là vốn nhà nước ông bắt tay với nhau, đáng nghĩa phạt có 10 đồng nên ông bảo cho 100 đồng, thế là không ổn rồi, đúng không ạ? Thì nó cũng có những cái câu chuyện mà cái luật chúng ta quy định là để cho linh hoạt quá nó cũng dẫn đến cãi nhau, mà chặt chẽ quá thì làm mất đi cái sự sáng tạo, cái tính linh hoạt của xã hội. Và vì vậy mà sáng ngày tôi cũng có chia sẻ với lại tất cả quý vị đấy là làm thế nào để luật chúng ta mà vừa tạo được linh hoạt mà vừa tạo được cái sự công bằng giữa các chủ thể tham gia trong cái hoạt động đấy. Điều đấy vô cùng khó, không chỉ khó đối với những người mà làm luật, khó chính cả với chúng ta. Tôi nói nôm na thêm giống như kiểu câu chuyện sáng ngày tôi chia sẻ về cái bất khả kháng hoàn cảnh thay đổi cơ bản. Nhiều năm nay tôi đúng nấu chuyện là phải lượng hóa nó. Vì nếu chỉ định tính áp dụng vô cùng khó. Các quốc gia cũng thế, tôi nghiên cứu các quốc gia cũng thế, mình cũng thế. Và như vậy thì tiệu chung lại là, nó tóm lại là luật ban hành ra kiểu gì thì cũng sẽ vừa với người này, không vừa với người khác. Những người có hiểu biết, những người làm việc một minh bạch thì nó có thể nó vừa. Những người có thể là ít hiểu biết hơn trong lĩnh vực đó, người ta không hiểu gì cái đấy, người ta áp dụng một cách máy móc, hoặc là người ta cố tình gì đó không minh bạch, thì nó sẵn sàng là thành một cái công cụ, nó không trở thành một công cụ là giúp sức hoặc là không có ích đối với lại quản lý trật tự xã hội. Thì tôi cũng xin chia sẻ thêm vài cái ý như vậy và xin cảm ơn chị Trinh và cảm ơn
Thank you, Thủy.
panel.
Thank you. But we have following questions. If we can have another 2 minutes to ask Mr. Park Thủy. Yes.
Maybe you have explained it already, but I'll ask it anyway. How should we understand corresponds to in Article 86 of the new construction law? What does that mean?
Ý là ông ấy hỏi là mình hiểu thế nào cái điều khoản của điều 86 là cái chữ là tương xứng với cái mức thiệt hại và cái nghĩa vụ, thì mình hiểu cái chữ tương xứng nó như thế
Chắc là
nào?
tôi nói nhanh quá thì mọi người không để ý, chứ thực ra thì vì là tôi bảo là vi phạm ấy thì nó có nhiều cái loại hình mức độ các vi phạm, các nghĩa vụ khác nhau. Ví dụ như vi phạm về công suất của nhà máy.
Không phải cái đó Thủy, anh này muốn hỏi một cái khác, anh hiểu cái đó rồi, mình nói rồi, nhưng mà cái câu mà
em đang nói đến đây chị,
liquidated damage,
em hiểu cái ý đấy, em đang nói đến, em hiểu cả tiếng Anh bạn ấy nói là cái gì. Với mỗi loại hình như tôi vừa nói đấy, cái công suất của nhà máy, ví dụ như tôi đưa ra một cái ví dụ công suất của nhà máy lọc dầu ấy, người ta bảo đến 95% thì ông phải chịu phạt này. Cùng là mức vi phạm, tức là đạt được công suất đó đến 95% thì ông phải phạt này. Tức là mức cái gì, cái nghĩa vụ vi phạm đấy là gì, công suất nhà máy ông không đạt được, và tương xứng với cái mức vi phạm đấy là ông vi phạm là đến 95% thì phạt bằng cái này, ông vi phạm ông làm được cho tôi đến 98% thì nó phạt bằng cái này. Chứ không phải là cứ cái hoạt động là vi phạm về công suất của nhà máy thì tôi phạt ông bằng cái này. Ý nghĩa nó là như vậy.
như vậy là có nghĩa rằng là ý của các diễn giả này có muốn hỏi về cái chuyện mà tại vì liquidated damages á, theo cái định nghĩa của common law đó là nó là coi như là nó không có cần phải chứng minh, không có phần phải chứng minh cái thiệt hại và cái lỗi, còn ở đây corresponding là có cái causal link giữa cái hai bên.
The reason why I'm asking is because for people unfamiliar with Vietnamese law, we tend to think if you have to prove the corresponding actual loss in order to get the predetermined loss, what's the point of having a predetermined loss provision in LD clause if you have to prove actual loss? And maybe the confusion comes from the unfamiliarity of Vietnamese law, but I wanted to understand proving corresponding actual loss or the extent of loss. What's the intention? What do you mean?
Túm lại em hỏi chị
Tại vì
em muốn hỏi anh là cái
Dạ.
chứng minh đấy là chứng
Dạ.
minh gì?
Chứng minh thiệt hại thực tế để so sánh nó có tương
Luật mình
xứng.
có quy định luật mình không có quy định là chứng minh, mà ở đây là cái mức độ vi phạm tương ứng với mức độ vi phạm
Yes, I
đấy.
understand what he said. Tức là bây giờ mình đã hiểu rồi, có nghĩa
But
là
the-
đây không phải là
wording
chứng
is
minh,
very confusing. I agree.
không phải là chứng minh, không phải là chứng minh mà chỉ là tương xứng với lại cái mức độ thiệt hại mà thôi. Ok.
Nhưng mà tương xứng với mức độ thiệt hại.
Chứ không phải là phải chứng minh.
Túm lại là cái nhà máy đáng nhẽ ban đầu tôi với ông hợp đồng với nhau là công suất 1 triệu tấn năm, ông sản xuất cho tôi 1 triệu lọc dầu, tôi 1 triệu tấn năm. Nhưng nay sau khi làm xong nhà máy nó chỉ lọc được có 950.000 tấn năm thôi. Thì ông sẽ phải chịu phạt cho tôi bằng này, tôi vẫn nhận nhà máy của ông, nhưng ông phải chịu cho tôi tiền phạt bằng cái này. Còn nếu ông đến 98% thì ông phải chịu phạt bằng cái này. Cái mà mọi người băn khoăn nhất thì không phải là cái đấy. Mà tại sao là 95% thì mức phạt bằng này, mức bồi thường
Đúng rồi,
này,
câu hỏi là chính xác đấy.
mà tại sao lại đến 98% nó là cái
Đúng
kia?
rồi, chính xác. Đấy câu hỏi là
Đấy là câu hỏi mà mọi người đều đặt ra, và tôi nghĩ không phải là chỉ riêng ông Việt Nam đâu. Tại vì là người ta ở nước ngoài thì người ta nói rằng trừ khi một số nước nhá, tôi không dám nói hết. Một số nước thì người ta nói rằng là nếu trừ khi là cái mức đấy là mức quá đáng, tức là vượt quá nhiều so với cái mức mà bị cái nghĩa vụ lỗi vi phạm thì người ta mới xem xét đánh giá lại. Thế còn người ta cũng chẳng có quy định là thế nào là nó vượt, ví dụ vượt 300%, 200% hay 500% thì gọi là quá đáng. Thì người ta không có quy định, và mình vì thế tôi mới nói một cái ý là luật đấy thì linh hoạt, mong muốn linh hoạt là để các bên tự đánh giá, bởi vì khi ông đạt 95% thì ông phải tự đánh giá với nhau, ngồi bàn tại sao là phạt 5% mà không phải là phạt 7% hay phải bồi thường 7%, thì tự các chủ thể phải đánh giá được cái tình huống đấy nó ảnh hưởng như thế nào. Ví dụ như là mất 5% công suất thì mất cần này doanh thu, và mất cần này doanh thu thì cứ mỗi năm tôi hết cần này, mất cần này lợi nhuận, đúng không nhỉ? Và cần đấy năm thì ra bao nhiêu lợi nhuận, thì bài toán đấy là bài toán của các chủ thể phải chứng minh được việc đó để mà trước khi mà thỏa thuận, chứ không thể nào mà bảo là như tôi vừa nói lúc nãy, nếu linh hoạt quá mà chúng ta không có một cách khoa học thì sẵn sàng là mất 1 đồng nhưng mà người ta bảo phải đền bù 10 đồng.
Yeah, thank you very much for the insightful elaborations from Mr. Thủy. Rất là cảm ơn bác Thủy đã giải thích rất tận tình. Và bây giờ là cái discussion này có thể kéo dài hơn rất là nhiều, nhưng mà mình đã hết thời gian rồi. Vừa hết thời gian cho nên là xin cảm ơn mọi người. Thank you very much for your attention and thank you for all of the questions. Thank you.
expertise in delay methods and is a recipient of Client Choice Award in recognizing his commitment to delivering exceptional client service. Beyond his advisory work, Anil is also an active contributor to the construction law community. He is a former chairman of the Society of Construction Law in Hong Kong and served as a mentor with the Chartered Institute of Building. A regular speaker in industry conference and professional forums, he is known for his clear structure analysis and thought leadership on program-driven dispute resolution. So everyone, please give a hand to Anil.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I was just moving forward there. First of all, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm aware that we're in the late afternoon slot, which is usually the hardest one for any presenter. So I hope you've all had your caffeine hits and you can keep going for the last hour and a half. I'm sure you'll all agree that the SCL Vietnam combined with the VIAC have done a superb job so far in organizing this event. I'll try and keep this topic on program, both for the audience and just to keep the day moving. Today, I want to discuss a simple but important idea, and it's regarding programming, risk allocation, time management under NEC form of contract. Here, I'm going to look at the adaptation, regional practice, and implications for Vietnam. NEC is not just another standard form of contract. It's a different system in itself in managing time and risk. The NEC suite of contracts was developed by the Institute of Civil Engineers in the United Kingdom. It's widely used internationally on various infrastructure and engineering projects and public works projects. It's designed as a collaborative form of contract with proactive project management at the heart of it, with clear risk allocation between the parties, i.e. the employer and the contractor. NEC contracts use plain English. This requires early warnings of potential issues that might arise, including a detailed procedure for managing time and change and costs. Today, I'm going to examine NEC, not simply as an alternative form of contract, but the structural shift on how time risk is managed and governed within construction projects. From a programming point of view and perspective, NEC changes three fundamental core elements. Firstly, the contractual status of the program. Secondly, the timing and the method of the delay assessment. And thirdly, the allocation and management of the time risk-related issues. Then briefly, I'll consider what this might mean for Vietnam, given the current infrastructure growth and disputes landscape. Right. So why this matters for Vietnam? Across Vietnam, infrastructure projects have increased in scale. And this morning we heard how there's a large influx of infrastructure projects coming online. And this will have its own natural technical complexities and financial exposure. Airports, metro systems, highways, and energy facilities are the core of this new infrastructure boom. And this also includes multinational funding, such as the PPP models that we've seen and heard of today. And also delayed supply chains that are involved in this, as well as the regulatory interfaces, such as new legislations and so forth. In such environments, time risk is no longer a secondary commercial issue. It's at the central of the project viability. Delay remains one of the most persistent sources of disputes in construction, as I'm sure most of you will agree. Under traditional frameworks, extension of times are frequently assessed in a retrospective manner i.e. some years after the project has been completed. And this is really done. Oh, yeah, we're still on this slide, sorry. Some years after the completion of the project through forensic reconstruction of the events using a retrospective model. And this produces a couple of issues. We have a bit of a hindsight bias, concurrency disputes arise, escalating prolongation costs, claims, and significant commercial uncertainties. Traditional forms such as FIDIC that's been used in Vietnam have shaped the international construction for decades. Whilst they provide a robust framework, risk allocation, delay analysis under such contract is frequently performed retrospectively, i.e. after the event. The critical question typically becomes what actually happened. Experts reconstruct using as-built data and utilize retrospective delay methods. Although technically sophisticated, the approach presents inherent limitations. It relies on historic records that might be incomplete or missing, and sometimes can even be strategically curated, invites reinterpretation of past events, benefiting from hindsight. It often escalates complex issues into concurrency arguments and may crystallize disputes long after the commercial relationships have deteriorated. When disputes are resolved years later, financial consequences may already have destabilized either contractors, supply chain, and public budgets. Investors increasingly view time as a governance indicator of systematic maturity. Transparent and predictable time adjustment mechanisms influence not only dispute risk, but also financing costs and bid pricing behaviors. NEC, on the other hand, attempts to change all of this with this dynamic embedding delay assessment into live project management. So NEC structurally connects time, risk, and money. Under NEC, the program is not merely a programming document. It's at the core of the management tool itself. This is a fundamental shift from the traditional norm. And the program is important, but often treated as evidential rather than detrimental. Under NEC, program occupies a central operational role. The program shows how the contractor plans to undertake the works, identifies the key dates and the completion milestones, and demonstrates when the contractor requires information, access, actions from the client or any others. It illustrates flow sequencing assumptions and forms the basis for the impact of compensation events. Becomes once accepted the reference framework for delay and entitlement assessment. The preparation of regular updating programs is not optional under NEC. It's a contractual obligation. The contractor submits a program for acceptance. The project manager reviews this program, and once accepted, this becomes the baseline for assessing future events. Crucially, accepted programs do not transfer the delivery of risk from the employer to the employer. Responsibilities achieving the completion remains with the contractor. However, the accepted program establishes a structured logic against which time impacts can be measured. This creates several consequences. Program quality directly affects the entitlement. Logic inherently becomes critical. Artificial or unrealistic sequencing exposes vulnerabilities, and administrative discipline becomes central to risk protection. And failure to maintain an accepted program may undermine compensation events and their assessment. In practice, NEC rewards discipline for forecasting and exposes weak programming. A poorly constructed program is not merely a technical weakness, but it becomes a contractual liability. NEC attempts also to do something very differently. It creates a defined contractual process for dealing with compensation events, i.e. addressing change, etc. It introduces an early warning mechanism requiring parties to identify and manage risk proactively. And this starts at the outset with a risk register, where before even the project commences, all of the risks are identified and recorded on how these have been addressed. Some might get escalated to compensation events, but some can be addressed then and there. Where this becomes really beneficial is years down the line as project and staff team move on, project records get lost. This is an accurate record of what has been identified as risk and also how it's been mitigated and addressed. The process also requires prompt notification of the compensation events, and it requires the contractor to submit quotes or quotations, and this usually is 3 in number. And the assessment of the impact is addressed in a prospective manner as opposed to the retrospective in a traditional form against the accepted program. This is, and crucially, each step of this process must be carried out within the defined timescales, as you'll see on the right-hand column. And this is not optional at all. This is a structured risk management system, and delay assessment is no longer done years down the line in a courtroom about dealing with experts. This is embedded in the project management itself. So the program, as you'll see there, is really at the heart. The contractor under clause 31 is required to submit program like all other contracts, but in this one, it's got to show logic, flow, critical path, method, and the resources it wishes to deploy. Only once the project manager accepts the program, it becomes the accepted program, and that's with a capital A and a capital P. And this isn't merely a planning document, as I touched upon earlier on. It's a contractual mechanism which changes time and costs are also assessed against. Compensation events evaluated by the reference to their forecast effect on the completion date and the key date, and measured against that accepted program. Without an accepted program, the assessment becomes inherently problematic. The system risks drifting back into a retrospective debate, the very outcome that NEC seeks to avoid. This reinforces the central importance of programming governance. Scope, obligation, constraints, and compensation events all are covered within the program model itself. It functions simultaneously as a management tool and a risk allocation mechanism. And here, I want to use an analogy, as Mino Han referred to his adapter regarding his hairdryer. I want you to consider and remember this. The accepted program is really at the heart of the contract, so it is the heart. Each update under clause 32 is its heartbeat. Each revision pushes the risk, the forecast, the entitlement through that contractual body. The scope is really the skeleton, and the clauses are the nervous system. Payment mechanisms are the organs, but the accepted program is really at the heart that governs all of that. It beats regularly, entitlement flows predictably. However, if it stops, the whole system fails. Perhaps the most significant shift introduced by NEC is its methodology. Traditional delay analysis tends to look at what actually happened, i.e. adopting a retrospective form of analysis. NEC asks, what is the forecast impact on the completion at the time of the event? Or in other words, the dividing date under the contract. This is a prospective assessment. When compensation events occur, the impact is assessed on the forecast effect, forecast being the key, on the accepted program at that point in time. The parties evaluate how the event predicted to affect the completion, not ultimately how the events unfolded subsequently with the benefits of hindsight. This approach produces several structured effects. The delay assessments become contemporaneous, hindsight bias is reduced, program integrity becomes paramount, and claims are crystallized a lot earlier. Commercial positions are also clarified earlier. However, it also increases technical demands. To function effectively, it requires a logic-linked baseline program, regular updates, reflecting actual progress, transparent modeling of those events, and a competent program administration, and an engaged project manager that's capable of an independent assessment, which can be an issue at times. If the program is unrealistic or the administrative aspect is neglected, entitlement becomes vulnerable. It also alters behavioral incentives. For contractors are incentivized for notifying events early. Employers are incentivized to respond. Silence or any delay to that essentially may carry contractual consequences. Now we reach one of the most technically sensitive areas, float and concurrency. NEC doesn't explicitly allocate ownership at float. Instead, Clause 63 focuses on one key question. Does the compensation event delay the completion? If the completion does not move, then there's no extension of time. However, the terminal float, i.e. the gap between the planned completion and the contractual completion, NEC provides that the terminal float cannot be used to mitigate the effect of a compensation event. In other words, this means that the contractor owns any terminal float on the program. Concurrency, on the other hand, under many traditional forms of contract, traditional frameworks, concurrency is treated as a legal doctrine. Debates whether delays are either true concurrency, dominant, or apportionable. And this varies across all jurisdictions. NEC shifts the concurrency from a legal forum to a technical modeling. The question becomes, does the compensation event independently delay the completion on the accepted program at the dividing date? If the forecast impact of the compensation event when modeled against the program doesn't move the completion date, well, there's no extension, regardless of the parallel contracted delay. Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand have all adopted NEC at various forms and various levels. Hong Kong structured approach of NEC across all public works provides probably the clearest case study as to the method. And this has been also adopted in quasi-government entities such as the Airport Authority and MTR that do all the rail projects. And there are benefits that were observed. There was a cultural normalization of the early warnings where previously people were a bit apprehensive to put early warnings into effect. There's real-time adjustment to the completion dates, i.e. the project manager is awarding extension of times through the course of the project. There's a lot more improved discipline in the documentations, and there's a reduction in the large end of project extension of time claims where we'll get to the end of the project and a big claim for EOT lands on the desk. However, with that, challenges have also been observed. There's been inconsistent programming across the contractors. So where we have various tiers of contractor, this ultimately also affects the quality of the programs. There's been a big learning curve for the project managers. And this particularly comes to awarding extension of time because it's not something that they naturally do. Whilst there was an initial resistance to time bar scenarios, because as I touched upon earlier, NEC does provide clear timelines when certain aspects need to be met. This has become a lot more strict. The lesson's clear though. NEC requires institutional support and technical competence, and technical competence is a key one to it. So as we stand in Vietnam, we see that we are at a pivotal moment in its infrastructure trajectory. As projects grow in scale, international financing increases, and this is something that's been very much observed in the side conversations that I've been having with people. Time governance becomes strategically significant. NEC adoption could offer structural benefits, greater transparency to these foreign investors, predictability on structured time adjustments, reduced retrospective claims accumulation, i.e. the claims not waiting till the end to be given, an alignment between the project management and the contractual rights. However, successful integration would require a coordinated reform strategy, such as national guidance on NEC and how it should be administered, and training for the public sector. So for programming and delay specialists, NEC shifts the professional role significantly. The traditional expert model emphasis of a retrospective forensic analysis under NEC moves forward. Real-time predictive modeling becomes paramount, and continuous program governance is at the forefront, and strategic risk advisory during the project execution. Programming becomes central rather than an evidential support at the end when the dispute is crystallized. So my final reflection, NEC is often described as collaborative, but it has its deeper significance, embeds forecast accountability, administrative discipline, and programming-driven entitlement and continuous time governance. It creates a contract with a heartbeat. Each accepted program strengthens or weaknesses that, but success will only be determined by the drafting style in Vietnam. And the quality of the accepted program and the discipline that it's kept to keep it alive. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Anil. So for the next speech, I would like to invite Professor Nasim Amir Ali. So Nasim has over 30 years experience in UK, Malaysia, and New Zealand as a construction professional and academic. A former director of an international consultancy, he now teaches on the Massey University Master of Construction in Construction Law. He's a past president of the Royal Institute of Surveyor Malaysia, former vice chair of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrator Malaysia, and currently serve on the New Zealand Institute of Quantity Surveyor National Board, Society of Construction Laws New Zealand Council, and Chartered Institute of Building New Zealand Committee. He wrote plain language drafting guidelines for the construction industry, set by the Standard New Zealand 3910 Drafting Committee. So he was the SCL New Zealand representative on the drafting committee and also the author of the first standard form of construction contract in the world to attain the Clear English Standard accreditation given by the Plain Language Commission UK. So Nasim impact statement, I am a simplifier, and he's proposed to promote harmony by championing plain language. So I hand over to you, Nasim.
Okay, I think now that it's after lunch and towards the tail end, can we have a 1 minute or 2 minute song? Is that okay? Yeah, but the deal is this. You must listen carefully to the song. At the end of the song, I'll be asking you questions. Deal? Okay, so even if I don't do the slides, don't worry about it. There's 82 slides anyway. I'll just give it out. But we will just listen to the song, okay? So let's hear this now. And that's a good thing about Mac. You can actually do this, right? Up, yep. I'm not going to sing.
we can build. All the variations are documented. For yes, as the turns down, yeah.
Okay, folks, well done. What's the name of the song? I brought this all the way from New Zealand. Okay, I transited in KL. I forgot to bring the Whittaker's chocolate. This is Whittaker's chocolate, internationally famous in New Zealand. Since you gave the answer, you get it. The only one I've got. Okay, you're welcome. That's it. But do come to New Zealand. I'll give you more Whittaker's chocolate, right? Oh, and yeah, everyone is welcome. Okay, right. Now I hope. Look, there's not much time. As I say, I've got 82 slides and I've got 4 or 5 documents, which I'll obviously share it after this. But if you can just remember what's the key message that I'm trying to get here, I'll have served my duties to Long and Trong and everyone else who invited me here, okay? And of course, Hong Kien and so on. So the message that I'm trying to share with you is this, that my point here is that construction contracts can be modernized into plain language without losing the legal intent of the original drafters. It is possible. There is enough evidence of it. I've got 2 or 3 PhD students doing in various areas. So that is no longer the question. All he needs is now for me to persuade people like you. I'll do a quick show of hands and so on, as well as eventually the drafting bodies like FIDIC, NEC, it's not too bad, nearly there, and PAM and SIA and Standards New Zealand. I sit on the drafting committee as a Society of Construction Law drafting rep, but we didn't quite achieve 18 out of 18. I've got an 18-point drafting guideline extracted and consistent with international drafting guidelines. So again, I'll share that with you. The New Zealand one scores 12 out of 18. It's for you to look at the 18 and test JCT, NEC, FIDIC, SIA, and see what is the score. That's the kind of things that I get my students to do. I can tell you this, if you don't get A grade, that's not good. So Standards New Zealand, I was in the drafting committee, 23 of us, we drafted by committee, we achieved 12 out of 18 because we have to compromise and so on. Anyway, let me move on. Oh, and this thing about what happens in Saigon should not remain in Saigon. 2 things. One is what I'm sharing with you should not remain here. If you do know people from FIDIC, oh yes, we've got some members on the board of FIDIC as well. So if you can send this message, I'll try and be polite about FIDIC and NEC and SIA and all that, because I don't want to be kicked out, you know. I might not get a visa in future. Okay, so do share it. Now, the other thing about what happened in Saigon should not remain in Saigon is one other thing I want to say. Oh, by the way, Anil had, Anil, are you okay to share your paper with, okay, right. Anil's paper is very detailed. And the other paper I want to particularly highlight is this. Justice Lee Swee Sing's paper, 52 pages, 15,200 words or so, 136 paragraphs. I strongly recommend every one of us reads it. Because if you read it, I don't have to present. It's substantially there. But no, I'll present now just to keep you entertained. But do read the judges. He's a federal court judge, okay? Right. Now, let me just quickly run through this. This is my mission statement that was already read. I'm a simplifier. My purpose is to promote harmony. when my coach, I said, I'm in dispute resolution. He said, no, Nasim, don't use the word dispute. It's negative. So I said, I'm promoting harmony. And how do I do that? Championing plain language. Let's move on. This is it. This is Vision 2030. I was talking to a few of you. Put up your hands if you laughed earlier when I said that by 2030, I'm going to get FIDIC rewritten in plain language. There you go. Own up. Yep. 1, 2. Because we recorded this discussion. When I said I'm going to FIDIC to rewrite completely by 2030, there will not be 1,200 users of the word shall in FIDIC by 2030. And they laughed. Go on, laugh louder. Okay, we were taking it as a challenge. Likewise, JCT, likewise, Standards New Zealand, AS 4000 in Australia, already done, no shall. Legislation in New Zealand, 20, 30 years, no shall. New South Wales, no shall. Victoria, no shall. Singapore, the latest, the Security of Payment Act, in 2009, they had plenty of shells. The new one, the amended version, 2 shells, accidentally. But I'm sure that will be rectified. Just 2. Must to mean must, may to mean may. Why not shall? Answer, because shall has got at least 8 meanings, not me. Oh, by the way, disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. Professor Peter Butt, emeritus professor from Sydney Law School, well regarded. Judge Painter, one of the most published judges in Ohio, in US, and so on. So this is basic stuff. You just take it, not from me, from these world authorities, okay? Let's move on. So my vision is that all construction contracts in the world should have a structure and done in a logical way, such that the main users, architects, engineers, QS, contractors, subcontractors, and so on, can understand, as well as secondary users. Who are secondary users? Judge, arbitrators, mediators, adjudicators, claims consultants, lawyers, and so on. They are secondary users. Everyone can understand. That is the sort of my vision, if you want. Keep an open mind. Oh, by the way, I did say I'm not a lawyer, right? There you go, my disclaimer. Do you need 5 minutes to read it? Don't worry. What I did was I used ChatGPT. I got second one. I said, rewrite that in plain language. I got that. The name used are completely random and don't refer to any. Are we okay? Then I said, no, ChatGPT. I want a plainer. I want in 1 sentence. So the names used in this presentation, purely fictional and bear no reference to any person, real, living or dead. Okay? So you can use ChatGPT, use generative AI, but you make sure you prompt properly to get this. This one I like. Which one you prefer? I'm going to ask you a question. Version 1, version 2, version 3, or version 4? Version 4, my prompt was 1 word. And he said fictitious. Oh, come on. What I'm saying is not fictitious, okay? So don't overdo it. Which version do you prefer? Which one? Second one. Second or third? This is the second one. This version 1, this version 2, this version 3. How many 2? Put up your hands. How many 3? Put up your hands. Okay, and how many 4? No, you can't choose 4. Okay, anyway, the point here is Einstein said make everything as simple as possible, but don't overdo it. Okay, so we should heed Einstein's advice. So anyway, it's your choice. Now, there is a couple of news as at today, 9th April 2026, which is affecting the whole world. Every one of us has been affected. And there are 2 things. One is the proliferation and the acceleration of generative AI and uncontrolled abuse, which can happen and has happened. And the second thing is the breakdown of the rule of law. We can see it right now, today, last week, a couple of weeks ago. There is a breakdown in the rule of law. But on these 2 points, there's going to be chaos in the world, but there is hope. And the hope comes from, believe it or not, from most of the people in this room. And I'm going to share with you why you cannot rely on outsiders. The people who are going to salvage humanity are in this room. I'm going to quote to you actual, the founder of generative AI's words, and then I'll explain to you why I think the hope for future is in this room. Okay, so 2 things, yeah, uncontrolled abuse of generative AI and break down the rule of law. Now, Geoffrey Hinton is a guy who literally is the father of modern LLMs, Okay? He said, humanity will be wiped out. Not me saying it. The guy who actually invented it is saying it. He said this last year. Really? Worrying. Why is he saying that? But it's okay. As I said, I got a solution. So he's worried, I'm not. And the reason why I'm not is because I got hope in of the people in this room, and that's the reason. Let me explain. See, many of us, how many of you are lawyers? Put up your hands. When I say lawyers, don't just law degree. You can practice, you can practice law. Come on, don't be shy. Surely there's a few more lawyers. There's only 2 lawyers. Okay, 3, 4. Oh, yes, 5. It doesn't matter. You just call yourself a lawyer. Anyway, when it comes to law, architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, construction. How many are construction professionals? Put up your hands. Okay, right. So if you're a professional, you have a minimum body of knowledge. You belong to a professional body. And the third thing is you've got code of ethics, right? You misbehave, you get sacked, right? Good. There's a 4th element, which nobody talks about. And that 4th element is altruism. Clients, societies, and professional interests before self-interest. That is a prerequisite to calling yourself a professional. All professions. Dentists, doctors, whatever. If you're a gynae and somebody is about to deliver, hey, come, cesarean section, come, I make money. Is that what you should do? Or should you do what's in the best interest of the patient, society, and your profession, your reputation? What would you do? Well, I'm telling you, I don't care what you actually do, but if you're a professional, the expectation is you're altruistic. And if you are not, quit the profession. I'm dead serious. You should not be practicing. Okay, just remember, right? 4. Because that's coming into salvation of humanity. I'm coming to that. So, oh, by the way, software engineering is not a professional. Okay? Software engineering is not. Civil engineering is. Mechanical engineering is, but software engineering, AI, no, it's not. So I helped a bit of ChatGPT. I analyzed it. Civil engineering, quantity surveying, software engineering, and then I asked prompter, this, that, and the other, tick, 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 tick. There you go. The conclusion is there. Software engineering is not a profession yet, whereas civil engineering is, quantity surveying is, and of course, lawyers, no need to talk. Of course, they're professionals. They will always act in society's best interest. They will not do naughty things like lie and so on. Or cheat, right? That's assumption. Now, because we're professionals, mainly professionals in this room, we know that we will behave ethically when we use generative AI, right? That's one. Second, we will make sure that contracts that we draft, our clients who pay us good money will be able to understand. Are we clear? So adjudicators' determination or decision, judgments and so on are for whom? The parties, the contractor, subcontractor, the client? Or are you going to be drafting judgments in language which only lawyers understand? Client, you shut up, you don't understand. Now pay me more money, I'll interpret the judgment whether you won or lost. Think about that. I'm in touch with the top 10 world authorities on plain legal drafting, including Judge Painter, who trains judges. We had such a session in Malaysia in 2008, 22nd, 24th of July, where we had Judge Painter there. The then Chief Justice. We had a meeting. He shared his judgment with Judge Painter, just as a sampler, talking about plain language. Okay, a similar event is going to happen in November this year in Kuala Lumpur, repeated in Auckland, and I'm going to get Judge Painter, Peter Butt, and so on. Right? We can discuss that. Anyway, so whether the profession is legislated or not, because quantity surveying, for instance, may not be legislated. Okay, whereas lawyers are, accountants are, and so on. So that the salvation basically requires us to behave in such a way that we will take heed of responsible use of generative AI. Are we clear? Right. Now, still on AI, smart people use AI as a tool, more like a Google. I say be wise. Wise people use it as a second brain. Just like sometimes we have all kinds of discussions, during the breaks and all that. Hey, what do you think? Oh, yeah. Oh, we're having discussions. Use those AIs as a second brain. Ask the right question, interact, challenge. Yeah, this. I can demonstrate on the phone, but I'm not going to do it now. Maybe we do it during the forum session because I don't want to, I've still got plenty to go. Okay? So I can demonstrate that live, but I won't. So which one do you want to be? Smart or wise? Come on, put up your hands. Smart, put up your hands. Wise, put up your hands. Okay, good. For the few of you who have put up your hands, just know something. You're benefiting from this because when you put up your hands, oxygen goes in, you will remember. I'm not kidding. Would you like to stand up? Those who said wise, who wants to be wise, stand up. Look, I've attended Anthony Robbins conferences, okay, 4 days. I paid 2,000-3,000 in Singapore. Go on, stand up. Who wants to be wise, stand up. Because there is evidence to show scientifically that if you're seated for very long, you'll die soon. No, I'm dead serious. Have you not heard that? Really? You haven't heard that? Oh, maybe I should do a reference and share that as well. Anyway, let's move on. Having said that, generative AI does hallucinate. So always, always, always fact check. Okay. And or if you don't want it to be circulated everywhere, use closed systems like ChatGPT Enterprise version. It's very expensive, but that's up to you, your companies or whatever, if they can afford it. Of course, you can use Notebook LM, as the good judge had said at yesterday's session, right? Which is a closed system. And here's an example of using AI as a basic tool, not really interacting, but just, hey, please, this is from FIDIC. I don't understand. Don't worry. We should be adaptable, right? Okay, so, clause 20.2, claims of a payment and extension of time under FIDIC. Oh God, I don't understand. You know why I don't understand? 69 words in one sentence. Can someone please go to FIDIC and beg them, please? There's this guy from Malaysia who's been living in New Zealand for 20 years. The guy doesn't speak English. He doesn't understand this. I've got a bachelor's from the University of Reading Conserving. I've got a master's in architecture from UCL, which is ranked #1 for built environment in the world, overall ranked #9. I've got another master's in construction law from King's College. I've got a PhD in civil engineering from University of Auckland. But I don't understand this. I struggle. So go and tell FIDIC, I'm struggling. The question is, can it be rewritten in plain language? The answer is, I already given you, right? Absolutely. Okay, this is just one example. But so what do? I'm stuck with current FIDIC, so I need to ask ChatGPT or whatever. Oh, okay. So I can do that. You can get a simplified version of it. But my observation is this. That was 236 words on average, 79 words per sentence. The recommended average is 20. Lord Benning's writing will be 16, 15. One of the most famous judges that ever lived on planet Earth. Okay, Obama's speeches were about 15, 16 words per sentence. Very powerful. I have a dream. I have a dream. 4 words. I'm not saying it's going to be 4. I'm saying average. But that one is struggling. Now, I even looked at the FIDIC golden principle. Apparently, they got this golden principles. Yeah, principle 2 reads: the particular conditions must be drafted clearly and unambiguously. So, in other words, the FIDIC golden rule says you must do that. But what about is that only in a particular condition? Right. So when you do particular condition, you must write in plain language. But when you do the main one, it's okay. Never mind. Why? I questioned that. Oh, by the way, I'm sharing these slides with you. So when you click on the link, you will be able to see my prompts and my discussions. Okay. They're not necessarily the best prompts. I'm just sharing with you. So this is how you would share what questions I had asked, what answers I got, right? Remember I said use it as a second brain. Don't just use it as 2. Now, here is 14.3 from FIDIC. Okay. Now, the original. It's okay. It's not too bad, right? Yeah, got, okay, ABC, and then another sentence. So if I'm a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, right? But can you look at that one? You know, the second paragraph without the after C, yeah, second paragraph, and then under this, I've redrafted it. I've got a PhD student working with me. We redrafted that. Observe. Technical content, 100%, no change. We didn't change policy, right? We don't want to change it. Look at that. Say 14.3.2. Each payment statement claim must, 1, state the amount, 2, 3, and 4. By the way, Where do you think we got this inspiration from? From the New Zealand Construction Contracts Act, adjudication. This is the New Zealand style, which is copied in Malaysia under the Construction Industries Payment and Adjudication Act. If you look at the Malaysian Act, very similar. The payment claim must, 1, 2, 3, 4, not shall, yeah? Must, 1, 2, 3. Do you see that? So, FIDIC, there's just one clause, can be rewritten. I mean, FIDIC is fine, okay? I'm just saying, even better, the next step. Are we clear? Okay. Anyway, who is Jeffrey Hinton? Were you paying attention? Don't know? Yes or no? Yeah, he's a father of, if you want, modern generative AI. How many pages are there in FIDIC? Oh, the answer is there, 225. How many shells are there in FIDIC 2017? Everything, the whole document, 1,472. Okay? No, it's not important, but that's what I do. I'm quite excited about contracts, and this is something that I created. D equals MC squared. It is mine. I'm the original creator of this. D equals MC squared. What is D? D is the probability of disputes is directly proportionate to M, the number of words in a contract, times C is the complex words used squared. Or if you prefer, I can also create another formula. E equals MC squared. E is the possibility of error. It's directly proportionate to the mass, number of words, times complexity of the word squared. Are we clear? Right. Oh, if it looks familiar, yeah, there are other more famous people. I'm just Nassim, I'm just a normal chap somewhere in New Zealand. We amongst 5.5 million population and 40 million sheep. So please do come to New Zealand. We would welcome you. And if any of you is ever traveling, come there. I mean, the Society of Construction Law will organize a talk for you to do a talk. Are we okay? Yep. And you can talk to my students as well. Anyway, would you sign a blank check? Does anyone sign? Oh, some of you are young. Do you know what's a check? The thing that you, yeah? Would you sign a blank check? Answer, no. But why do you then sign a contract that you don't understand? That's akin to signing a blank check. I've got a journal, a paper published in Clarity. Clarity is an international body of lawyers promoting plain language. Yeah? I'll share the paper with you, so I don't need to go into details of that. Right, call to action. The reason why I've got this call to action so early in my many more slides to come is in case I'm run out of time, at least I've asked you for the 4 things. Number 1, have a look at the 18-point drafting guideline I'm going to share with you. That's 1. Review it, refine it. If you like it, go for it. In November, in Auckland and in Kuala Lumpur, we'll have all these FIDIC chair of drafting and JCT and JBCC and Australia and everyone, SIA and PAM and everyone at this conference. And if we can come to an amicable resolution or charter or whatever, then we can do it. Of course, it can always be brought back to the bodies and then eventually signed. Anyone who's interested can sign the charter. That's for November 2026. That's the first thing. So review the 18-point drafting guidelines. See if you agree or disagree. For the records, it's consistent with all plain language drafting guidelines in the world. All. Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, the new Singaporean one, yeah, all. Second thing is, if I may suggest, if you're drafting a contract, draft it in plain language. If you're revising the contract, try to make it into plain language. We are working initially, myself, Long and Mia, who is in Auckland, have had a look at the preliminary draft proposal for Vietnam. We call it a beta version. It hasn't been released yet. We haven't even had a committee, just the 3 of us, right? Oh, Long and Mia give me hell. Oh, Nassim, this page you're gonna, I want this. Oh, I want mandatory mediation. Oh, sure. So they, they've got their own views because they are FIDIC fans. So, but I'm that's fine as long as it's written in plain language. The third thing is prompting skills are very important. By the way, it's called prompt engineering. So I created a word last year at the PAQS conference in Jakarta. I called it prompt surveying. Why? Because quantity surveyors. Why should I call it engineering? I call it prompt surveying. So now because I thought there were many lawyers here, so I call it prompt lawyering. So lawyers should be skilled in prompting because AI is not going to take over the lawyers. Lawyers who embrace AI wisely will take over those lawyers who are scared of it. Okay, so it's a warning. Oh, what was the last one? Oh yeah, collaboration, because I just heard the NEC, right? Collaboration. So I also say, yeah, collaborate. We must all hold hands, sit around a campfire, and then sing Kumbaya. Don't do what Uncle Trump is doing. No, I'm dead serious. Don't do it. That destroy humanity. But we're professionals, so we behave differently. Yeah, we're altruistic. We're not politicians. We're altruistic. We've got a duty to our profession, society, our profession, and our clients. 3 things, right? That's called altruism. The 4th criteria for definition of professional, which often people forget. Okay, so I'm not. These are things that I'm not going to go through. I can go through this. 5 minutes. Is it? Did you say 5? Okay. Okay. Oh, first he said 5, now he said 3. So anyway, 3 plus, I assume there's 2-minute float, whatever. Anyway, so these are things that I'm not going to go through, but I can run through every one of those, word for word, why contracts should use one word rather than the other or whatever, okay? So that's just some examples. Otherwise, you have academics doing like this. They write journal papers, disputing the existence of a dispute as a strategy for avoiding dispute. So, that's what academics do, keep you busy. So, but please, if everything is written in plain language, academics go out of job. Nothing to write. Okay, that's not good. What is this? Quick. A what? A what? Horse? A fox. Ooh, wow, foxy. What is it? A cat. See, you got fox, cat. You know what I can? If I'm a lawyer and you ask me the question, I can say, this is, hear me out, tell me if I can convince a judge. It's a series of triangles and a square and a trapezium. Is that correct or not? Yes. Fox, cat, what? This is what lawyers are supposed to do, right? They interpret to suit their client's needs, So, what do you see now? A fox, a cat, a dog, a monkey. I don't know. So, I don't know what animal. You have to describe it. Come on. We're in court now. You have to explain what it is, So, again, contracts which are not written in clear language are like these things. Clear? And this is what you have to do. Pray hard. Oh, God, please. I hope Justice Lee decides in my favor today. Maybe he woke up on the other side of the bed and then he's not happy. You lose. Whatever. Anyway, I hope he doesn't do that. Oh, sometimes this is QS's fault. Any quantity surveyors say put up your hands? Okay, only one dare admit. Well, I'm a quantity surveyor. So they go and put in the contract. Work must be constructed strictly in accordance with the drawings. You know what the contractor do? They go and put A610 on the, you see, strictly in accordance with the drawing, right? So there. Didn't get it, did you? No, anyway, you'll miss that. Anyway, so what guidelines we use? There are lots of guidelines, right? But I want to particularly emphasize ISO 24495, part 1 and part 2, okay? Or you can, as I said, you can use any drafting guideline. They don't care, as long as you use plain language and consistent with all those drafting guidelines, right? And here's a summary of the 18-point drafting guideline. As I said, I'll give you the 9-page document which explains every one of it, but here's a summary of it. Here are the 10 meanings of shall for those lawyers who are still shelling away and think that shall means must. Not true. He's from straight off Peter Butt's book, and of course, multiple crosses. Subject always to, subject always to, subject always to. I don't know how to remember 14, and then you go to 14, and then the subject to 13, then you go to 13, then go to 8. I don't know. Anyway, and stroke or using this. Some lawyers used to use this, right? Not anymore. And stroke or, and this is what judges have said. Abominable invention is barbaric. Some even said bastardly, not my word, I don't swear, judges' words, right? A verbal monstrosity, a Janus face verbal monstrosity, the child of the brain of either someone too lazy or too dull, meaning stupid, to know its precise meaning, okay? So now that the judge has walked in, I can no longer swear. I'll be a bit more well-behaved. So these are the alternatives. So there are solutions. There's solution. By the way, the one at the bottom, I hope the Singaporeans will forgive me, that comes straight off SCAL, Singapore Contractors Association Limited Contract, subcontract. So I hope that subcontractors in Singapore, whether English first language or not, they understand all that. Okay? How many words is it? 76 words, right? Yeah. But luckily, they don't use it in Changi Airport. No. They don't use SCAL. I got confirmation. This one's from Malaysia. Malaysia, government contract, 69 words. You know something? I was told by my former boss, I was told from my former boss at QS, oh, see, this one approved by AG, you know the JKR he's got a law degree. So what if he's got a law degree? I struggle to understand this. But JKR themselves, on their own volition, from 69 words, rewrote it to 29 words. Getting better. Okay? They themselves did. So it's not true that the earlier one was necessary. But I say, hey, why not this? Malaysian law applies to this contract. Okay? Anyway, we'll see how I'll do. These are all examples. Look, this is from SCAL again. 147 words in one sentence. In 2 sentences. Is it acceptable? How many think it's okay? How many things it should be transformed? How many say it's okay? Put up your hands. How many say it's not okay? Put up your hands. Okay, some of you are not here, but that's all right. And this is from UK GC Works 1. Okay, 159 words in one sentence. It's probably long telling me, okay, enough. Okay, but anyway. Okay, so folks, I think you got the message, right? Okay, good. So you got the message. Here are some examples before, after. What's a smart contract? And this is a sample of a first construction contract in the world to get the clear English standard accreditation. There's a link to it. I already said, all of you, which paper must you read? Paper by whom? Yeah, the judge. He's sitting at the back there. He wants to make sure that you read his paper, okay? And go and get him to autograph the paper if you print it. Anyway, this is a QS consulting contract. We're done. This is all New Zealand stuff. Oh, by the way, you know the Singapore Act 510? This is the 2 shells. Both of them are redundant. No liability lies against. And then the second one, no liability lies again. So it's a redundant shell. They just forgot to remove. So please, someone from Singapore, go and tell the drafters that they forgot to put that. I already said it to them in the Parliamentary Council office presentation in Perth last year. Anyway, this is my student. She's 89. She's doing a PhD. She is wanting the Accessibility Act for disabled people to be written in plain language. Okay? So please, if you don't heed my advice and rewrite FIDIC without any shells by 2030, yep, okay, yep. If you don't do that, please, for her sake, my PhD student, I hope she can graduate next year or so when she's 90. So please, at least, if not for me, for her sake, make sure that legislation is written in plain language, contracts are written in plain language, okay? And by the way, in case you're not aware, when she was 80 years old, she went to Antarctica. How many of you been to Antarctica? Put up your hands. No? You haven't been to Antarctica, but you're not. Oh, I see. You're younger than 80, right? Okay, yeah. Well, Margaret has gone to Antarctica. We just pray that she lives, well, she's Trump's age, but but she's a bit stressed because she's trying to finish off a PhD. So I repeat my vision. Every construction contract has got a structure and language style that parties to the contract and the secondary, the person administering it, and secondary users like judges and arbitrators and so on can clearly and easily understand. I repeat the call to action. Look at the 18-point drafting guideline. If you like it, it's fine. If you want to refine it. But whatever it is, if you can draft or redraft contracts following plain language drafting guides, and this prompt engineering, something I mentioned. We'll have this at the end after Joanna here, who is going to talk about how Changi Airport contracts are done or whatever it is. She's been listening carefully to NEC and me, and you'll see. So that's so not when if you got any questions. Well, anyway, if you got any questions, you can ask later. Okay, and that's sheep from New Zealand and a cow also from New Zealand. The sad thing is, you know what? You cannot see New Zealand in that cow. Can you see? The tail is hiding it. We prefer that way. You know why? Otherwise, Uncle Trump might come and say, hey, I like that South Island. I'll have it like Greenland. So it's better you hide. Okay, just hide away. By the way, so any of you who think that plain language, children start with plain language and then you teach them how to talk. Whereas here and before, here and after, and all that. So it's bad habit that you get taught at law school. So make sure that you train them young and influence them if you want them to be quantity surveyors or whatever. I've got 4 children, but only 1 became a quantity surveyor. Never mind. So that's how you influence them. Of course, you have to put to them left and right. Plain language, legalese. I didn't put FIDIC there, but that's the standard New Zealand contract. And the other one is the first construction contract in the world to get the clear English standard accreditation. But she actually preferred the New Zealand one because she kept looking at the New Zealand one. I don't know why, maybe it's a bit thicker. This one's nice and thin. So anyway, thank you very much. And as we say in New Zealand, kia ora. Kia ora means greeting. It can be good morning, can be goodbye, can be anything you meet a Kiwi, just say kia ora. Yeah, kia ora. Bye, kia ora. Kia ora. Hello, hello, good morning, kia ora. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nazim. Very interesting presentation. Okay, so our original schedule given is from 3:30 to 5, but we was handover a bit late, so we started 3:45. So baseline is until 5:15, but let's make it to 5:30, so give a bit more time to John. So I would like to invite to Joanna and give a bit introduction about her, and then I hand over to her. Okay, so Joanna is presently a director legal and compliance of Changji in Changji Airport Group, with 18 years of experience as a dispute resolution practitioner. Having practiced in both Singapore and Hong Kong, Joanna frequently advise and represent clients as lead counsel in a variety of international disputes, including rail and metro, power plant, solar plant, mining, integrated resort, and commercial and residential building projects. Joanna accolade include being ranked in 2022 and 2023 as a future star in construction by Benchmark Litigation Asia Pacific. In 2023 by Asia Law as a notable practitioner in construction, and in 2024 as one of the Singapore Business Review's most influential lawyers under 40, and in 2025 by Legal 500 as the next generation partners for project and energy, and by Chamber Partners as an up-and-coming practitioner construction domestic. She is also accredited as a fellow of the Singapore Institute of Arbitrators, and is amongst the inaugural batch of practitioners recognized as an accredited specialist in building and construction laws by Singapore Academy of Law. She is also sits as vice chair of the Society of the Construction Laws in Singapore. So please, Joanna.
Thank you so much. And Nazim is a very tough act to follow, and I regret my decision last night to go after him. But I don't have a song, I don't have slides. It's just a cheap ploy to make you look at me and listen to me. So, but I promise I will keep it very short. So I asked to go last because I wanted to tie in some of the things that Anil and Nazim have spoken about today. Right, and I wanted to give a different perspective. And I wanted to give that employer's perspective. So just a little bit of context to my comments today. As Long said, I was a practicing lawyer for about 18 years before I inexplicably changed sides, inexplicably even to myself. I changed sides. As a practicing lawyer, I advise contractors mostly on large infrastructure projects. And then I went over to the dark side, and I'm now with an employer on a very, very large infrastructure project, right? And today I wanted to share some of the insights that I've learned during my professional journey on the sort of contracting considerations, right? Both from the employer's perspective and sometimes from the contractor's perspective as well. Now, I'm keenly aware a lot of you in the audience are much more qualified than me to talk about these issues. So I think there's time for a Q&A, and I'd be quite keen to hear your views on that as well. But in the short time that I have, I'm just going to touch upon three main points. From the employer's perspective, when thinking about your contracting form, right? What do you use? I want to make 3 points. And the first point is there are very important considerations that every employer should think about before they issue their request for quotation, their tenders, and the like. I wanted to talk about some particular considerations in the Asian context And then I wanted to end it off with consequences if you don't make the right choice. So jumping very quickly into the first point, some of the things the employers need to look at. Look, someone had said to me, every construction dispute has its roots in a contract that someone thought was the right choice at the right time. Don't worry, it wasn't a client who said that to me, so it's okay. But what this means is actually somebody actually thought it was a good idea at the point, at the start, to go into this, only to find out later on it doesn't work for them. So I would say this. The contract form, a lot of people think it's boring, it's conditions, but it's not. It's the employer's first risk decision, right? Choose the correct form. If not, you're going to suffer. And for employers, when you look at it, it's actually a question of control and consequence. Because the thing is this, the fact of the matter is this. Employers, they have to live with their decisions. You've got your lawyers who advise you. But after you sign the contract, what do the lawyers do? They say, thank you very much, here's my bill. I might bring you out for dinner, but that's it, right? You live with the consequences of your decisions. Your project team lives with the consequences of your decision. Your finance, your risk management teams, they are the one who are stuck with this for 10 years, 5 years, right? And you have to think about it quite carefully. So some of the questions, and this is not something that's unique to Changi, I don't think, right? I think this is something that a lot of employers would think about. First question, who absorbs the uncertainty? Now, in all construction contracts, all infrastructure projects, there is uncertainty. There's known unknowns, there's unknown unknowns, there is what the hell even just happened kind of unknowns, right? And you need to know what sort of unknowns you're playing with. And on that, you then choose the contract form that best allocates how parties deal with the risk of this sort of unknowns, right? What happens when reality diverges from expectation? Who holds the key? Who holds the risk? And for an owner, you need to be very honest with your ability to absorb some risk. Why? You need to be responsible to yourself, right? You can't say, I am going to be the best employer, I'm going to take everything on. Your shareholders are going to murder you, right? But on the other end of the spectrum, you can't say, well, then I'm going to make the contractor take everything. Because why? The reality is contractors are not altruistic. They're not. We would like them to be, but they're not. They are pricing for the risk. And so if you push everything to the contractor and you adopt a contractual form that says, this is a wholly complex project and I know nothing about it, contractor takes all risk. Your contractor's price is going to be very, very high. And you're going to be paying for things that actually may not eventually eventualize, right? And you're paying a risk premium for things that you have just chosen to irresponsibly pass on to the contractor. So that's the first. The second is, what sort of behavior does the contract incentivize? I know I talked about collaborative contracting in the NEC form. And then, Naseem talked about FIDIC, right, which is a different behavior, right? Entitlement, notice. In Singapore, our public sector conditions of contract, it's also very much entitlement notice based and different behaviors, but there is no right or wrong. It really depends on the project. Because a really complex project, you might need a lot of collaboration. You need people to band together to work. But maybe on another project, very straightforward, I have tight time and cost constraints. Then I might want to go for a form that is more notice-based, more entitlement-based, so that I can control it, right? So different things, and that's why for employers, not every contract is going to be led on the same COCs, standard conditions, right? Because if you're responsible about it, you need to tweak to see, well, this one suits what. The contract shapes how your contractor behaves under pressure. The third point is this, and you won't find this in textbooks. Employers need to ask themselves, can your team administer this contract? Because you are holding the key, right? So, for example, I might have a very complex infrastructure project. And I might think that actually collaboration is the best answer for that. But, as Anil said, you need capable project managers to effectively administer that contract. If I don't have the project managers who have NEC expertise, no matter what I want to do, I can't go for the NEC form, right? Because I know my team is going to bungle this. Nobody's going to get the benefit of that contract. I might then have to take a very risk-based assessment to say, well, maybe I will go for FIDIC instead. Because at least there is some sort of familiarity. And if I need to collaborate, I collaborate within the realms of the FIDIC form. Could be, right? The other thing that we need to think about is also, if my team is under-resourced, what is the contract form? A very sophisticated contract which needs a lot of hand-holding from employer will not work, no matter how good it is, no matter how many lectures the employer has sat through to say it's a really good form. If I don't have the personnel, I'm asking for trouble, right? So those are the really important considerations. Now into my second point, particular considerations in the Asian context. And I see Mino is in the room because I'm going to use his power plug analogy, which I thought was really good. You can't just fit things in and expect them to work, right? And the reality of it is this: in Asia, a lot of the forms we use are written in London, in France, but we're in Asia, right? And in my perspective, conditions of contract are like the language of the project. And language is shaped by culture. And so if there is a cultural difference between what your project team is used to and what the contract requires, as an employer, you need to bridge that translation gap. Because if not, you're in trouble again, right? And I recall this some years back when I was a younger lawyer and I was dealing with a Chinese contractor. And the contract was on FIDIC, which is very notice-based and entitlement. But the contractor said, look, I'm very upset with my subcontractor. And I said, why? And he said, he keeps sending me letters and he keeps attacking me through letters. Why is he doing that? And I'm coming from Singapore and I think, well, obviously he has to do that because he's putting in claims. He needs to do that because that's what the contract requires. But the contractor was not comfortable. He said, you're attacking me. And you know what? I'm not going to assess any claims because I feel under attack. So there's that cultural issue that we have to be very careful about. It might be that the form is the correct form, in which case you need to educate your team, right? So that's the Asia reality, right? I think a lot of us in Asia, we're very collaborative, but sometimes we end up using a very notice-based form, right? So you have to bridge that gap. So the third point that I make is this: living with the consequences of your decisions, right? What happens? Why is it so important? It's so important because on top of administering every day, what happens when things go wrong? Does your team know how to work the contract so as to effectively resolve disputes? And we have to be realistic. Every construction contract, every infrastructure project is going to have disputes. You need to know what your form requires you to do in order to best succeed in any dispute, right? So, for example, in the public sector conditions of contract, superintending officer must could either retrospectively or prospectively assess EOT. If your own superintending officer doesn't even know that that's what he needs to do, and he goes into a dispute and he's wrong, you know, we've all been there, we've all done that. It's terrible, it's the worst thing to do. But there's also that thing that's a saving thing. That's a saving grace, right? Sometimes some of these contracts, FIDIC, they allow for DABs, dispute adjudication boards. If you're an employer and you've gone with FIDIC, but you don't even know how to effectively use the DABs, then are you really doing yourself a service? Are you really reaping the benefits of FIDIC, right? So a lot of considerations on that. And so that brings me to the end of my speech. And I just wanted to kind of end off, right? I think we've heard so much today from all the panel speakers about the relevant applications and all of that. But at the end of the day, for employers, it becomes a very, very practical risk-based analysis to say what is best for my project and not what anyone else tells me, you know, the government or whatever. It's not, right? It's what's best for this project. And that brings me to the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So can the organizer have to move the chair into the center? So in the meantime, if you have any questions, just prepare, raise your hand, and then we can address those questions. So Anil is on got more detail and knowledge on the NEC contract, while Professor Nasim can give you more information on the plain language, and Rana will give you a perspective from the owner eyes. Okay, so if you have any questions, just make it ready. Yep. So I think that's can we stand up and then okay. Okay. Okay, you sit exact. So okay. Thank you. So anyone got any question? I open the floor first. No hand. Okay, so let we start with some. I start with some question I have already. So let's start with Anil. So based on the practical experience, can you share with us like what are the three most common challenges encountered under the NEC contracts? And okay, and then also the areas that NEC proves that is most successful in the handling the construction contract. Yeah. Okay.
Just checking if this works. Okay, so I'm just conscious of the time, so I'll just keep it down to one. And it really touches on what Joanne just talked about in her presentation. First of all, the biggest problem, I'll start with the negatives and then move on to the positives because it's that time of the day. First of all, the poor project, the poor program quality. That's been an inherent problem within NEC contracts. And this really comes down to the fact that the contract prescribes key measures that need to be contained within the program, but these are frequently not met. What this essentially means is that the accepted program isn't functioning as it's meant to be. So it's not being approved as the project is developing across the timeline of the project. What this means is that you're having other fundamental problems with the compensation events. How are you meant to demonstrate entitlement when you've got an accepted program that's over 2 years old? It doesn't work. So this is another problem that we have. And also, how is the project manager meant to assess the compensation event on such an old program that maybe doesn't reflect reality or the project? However, what positives can we see? So going again onto Jana's point, cultural difference. This is a significant issue with all contracts, as Jan touched upon. But under NEC, what I've seen is that the early warning mechanism has really been adopted really well into the construction projects in Hong Kong. And what this means is whereby the cultural sensitivity of people raising issues where they might be a bit apprehensive, scared of reporting risks or issues, this has really been changed. And I'd say that's the biggest benefit.
Okay. Thanks, Daniel. John, so this one is just my own question. How the NEC is adopted in Singapore? I heard that government now starting adopted
Yes.
NEC.
So NEC has, I mean, our Building Construction Authority has spearheaded the introduction of NEC. Well, is it really very well received? You know, I think for a lot of employers, they are looking at it as what does the contract need, right? To be quite honest, I do hear from other counsel who act for employers is this. I've got a really big project. It's complex. NEC sounds sensible, but I don't know how to use NEC, and so the risk is amplified if I use NEC, right? So that is a concern that some employers have. But the implementation, yes, some of our government projects have been using that, and I think you dare to use it because you've got support from the government, right? But I think any employer doing it on their own at this stage might be a bit apprehensive. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joanna.
Just to add to that, to Joanna's point, Hong Kong was very much in the similar situation. You had an NEC contract, why on the front cover it was an NEC contract. However, the Z clauses pretty much changed a lot of the main clauses within the contract. But this, you also have to put yourself in a position, people have to adjust to a different way of thinking and administering a contract. You can't do this overnight. So you have to have slow mechanisms in the contracts to allow for that.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you. Okay, because when you come a new form of contract, you need to understand how does it work first. But as one of the FIDIC user in Vietnam, when I first see the NEC, I must admit that it's make it very simple for me. I don't know how it works yet, but the language there is much simpler and easier to understand than FIDIC itself. So that I will come to the Nasim. So why do you think that plain language is not used in construction contract before and only until this moment that we talk about this?
Okay, just a couple of things before I mention NEC, but I'll just say this. People accuse lawyers wrongly by saying, oh, they're doing this purposely so that, it's like a black box syndrome. You know black box syndrome in every? Do you know what color black box is? It's not black. Okay, it's orange. So anyway, so they call it, black box syndrome, so that only lawyers can understand. Clients will be relying on them. Actually, that is not the reason why lawyers draft the way they do. They're not doing it intentionally. The reason why all these contracts all these years are written in traditional legalese or traditional language is simply because that's all they know. That's the only language they know. Because it's like Spanish. I speak Spanish, so I write in Spanish. I don't know plain English. So Rudolf Flesch of Flesch Reading East, it's on your Microsoft Word document. You can analyze your readability statistics. He said, if you want to write in plain English, you have to learn it as if it's a new language, like you would learn Spanish. It takes a little bit of time. I used to draft more than 25 years ago. Whereas the parties hereby agree as follows. That's how I used to drive. But I decided consciously to, no, I want to learn. And nowadays I just go straight background and then I just go straight. So it's not intentional and it's because of habit.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Nasim. So speaking about that, actually tomorrow we are going to, this Saturday and Sunday, I think SCLVN is going to organize a course on the decision-making writing. So I hopefully that we learn something about how to do it clearer and precise what we want. Okay, so, to Rona, I have I think a question for you. In your experience, what is the single most common reason that owners lose dispute, which they should have won?
Arrogance. um, owners lose disputes firstly because they don't familiarize themselves with the form, right? They don't look at what is needed to defend their position if it ever gets challenged. And if you're not prepared to meet the challenge, you'll most likely lose a challenge. So I think, documentation and reasons why you are behaving in a certain way, if you are arrogant, you will lose that. And I think some of you in the room uh, saw me cross-examine a very arrogant employer in my days of being a lawyer. And it was amazing because the question was, why did you do what you did? Why did you do what you did? And the employer's answer was, well, because I'm the employer. So, that's the sort of yeah, please do not do that. But yeah, documentation, lack of preparation, and the assumption that because you're an employer, you're always right. I think that is the reason why employers do not succeed. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's very good point. So I think apart from lawyers here, can I ask you, like, what do you think about, like, of course, I mean, we are in process of prepare all the document and evidence as clear as we want. But what do you think about the plain language? Is that enough to address all the issue, complication of the construction contract? Do you think that it can be done? Like like Professor Nasim asked, can it be done by 2030? Any comment? Yep. Please. Can you turn it on? I think that's the press.
3 seconds.
The green light.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's already there. Yes. I'm Tilak Korane from Sri Lanka.
Okay.
I'm also a chartered accountant by profession. I fully agree with that things can be written in simple language, and also I agree what was said that it is done for habit, because they are unable to do otherwise. Now take other documents in contracts, drawings, the notes which are written by engineers on the drawings, they are in simple language. The specifications written by engineers and architects, they are written in simple language. Are they not contract documents? They are contract documents. And they play a major role in construction activity. And many disputes arise not from the conditions of contract, but from specifications and drawings, which are written in simple language. Thank you.
So technically, it can be simple and plain language. But then how come when it comes to contract that we need that very long, so long sentence to address all the issue? Okay. So and any question from floor? Okay. I just have a couple more on my computer, and then I think and then we can see if that we have any more. So this one for Nasim. Okay, plain language, I understand it's always like you try to reduce and make it clearer and easy to understand. I will come back to the question from the, I put to the floor. Can it represent or address all the issues that the construction contract normally encounter?
No, of course. You cannot solve all the problem in anticipation by simply writing something in plain language. No, definitely not. But if you can at least, look, this thing about fairness as well. At least I'm going into a project with my eyes open, knowing that, oh my God, the program is part of the contract document. I'm going with my eyes open. But don't blur it and put in words that I don't understand. That's all. So it's not going to solve all the problems. No, I want to go into a relationship with somebody else with the clear contract so that I know what my risks are. I can price for it. And then the client knows what their rights are, obligations. That's all. So it doesn't mean that there won't be any problems.
Okay.
And just to share one or two things, you know, I said about habit, right? That's what people do. But that's why I just cannot get over this. 25, actually it's 28, because I used to lecture in University of Malaya part-time, and my students told me this. I have been searching the whole world for plain language experts. I've been in touch with Judge Painter, Professor Peter Butt from US, Joseph Kimball from the US. He rewrote the court procedures in US. Mark Adler from the Law Society in UK. The whole world I searched. Suddenly, on the plane from Kuala Lumpur to Saigon, I transited in Kuala Lumpur from Auckland. On the plane, I received this in our WhatsApp group. Oh, Judge Lee Sui Sing had his paper. He shared. I read on the plane. I was mesmerized. I read the whole thing. And just as it was about to land in Saigon, I finished that article. I was speechless. Suddenly, I'm looking for the whole world for some plain language expert. And here we have my own kampung, my own backyard in Malaysia, and no less than a federal court judge. Wow. I just thought I can retire now. I don't have to do anything more because, you know, at least, yeah. So I don't know. So awareness, even Anil yesterday, I was surprised. He repeated a few times how it's important, you know. So there is awareness of these are prominent people, obviously. So there is hope for mankind by 2030.
Okay, I think that would be the same like the habit things, habiting things. I think it would be the same like even for the NEC contract. If you want to change something, if you want to apply something, it will take time. And back to Anil, what do you think that we should enhance the collaboration and also like aim for the ship of mindset from the contract, protecting our own interest in now change to the project interest. So how can we do that?
Look, I think we need to stop treating the contract as a whip, you know, and I think that's what Mr. Chu, if the translation was correct, because there was some dodgy translation going on, but we really have to stop using it as a weapon, essentially, against the contractor. We've got to work collaboratively, the early warnings, and this is basically identifying risks and addressing them. And it's a systematic change. We've got to have management buy-in. So whereby decisions are supported and everybody works collaboratively together. And really any risks, we've got to really be able to sit down and work through them rather than putting the risk onus on contractors because they've priced it. But I think that overall holistic approach would be the best way in a collaborative environment.
Can I just add something on Anil's point, and also actually on this plain English thing. So actually, when Singapore wanted to implement NEC into its form, one of the things that the government did was instruct some lawyers to update our standard form contracts so that we had Z clauses, right, for the NEC. Update the NEC form so that you had Z clauses, which came from our public sector conditions of contract. And let me tell you, the differences were stark because our public sector conditions of contract, I know Nasim has been very kind to not attack that, but the wording is not simple English, right? And then you try and word it in the way that NEC is phrased, and it was tough. It was a real tough exercise. And at the end of the day, it was a very big learning experience because you need to draw out the principles to say, well, this is what NEC does. And then you need to have a very honest conversation about, look, you're merging two contracts with two very cultural different backgrounds, try and force them together. Yeah, I think that was tough. And so I think what we need to do is really look at the collaboration, right? The collaborative element of that. And that's probably how it's going to succeed, I think, in Singapore.
And just to touch upon that, he was here before. Mino, he's just leaving us. He asked me a question regarding NEC and that translation. He said, well, how does this actually translate to looking at it from a cultural, a geographical and jurisdictional point of view? How does that translation work? And NEC is very simplified English, but in translation form, it might not translate directly. And what's quite interesting then, it was just launched in November last year. there's been a simplified Chinese version of NEC that's been brought out. And the aim of this is to slowly be brought into China, and they're sampling on projects in Shenzhen in the Greater Bay Area. And you know, where you take in a contract that's got simplified English, going back to the point, translation and cultural differences, it can be translated very differently. And I think we saw a similar example of that when we in the previous sessions regarding liquidated damages, where you might have a bit of a, so culture is a big element in it.
Yeah, okay. I think that's one last question, and then we can wrap up the session. I think everything that even the contractor normally, whatever the form of contract, whatever the wording, it will always start from the owner or the consultant, because the owner and consultant normally will always lead the way. So I just wonder whether you, when you draft the contract condition of contract, or do you think of the fairness to both client or contractor, or you just have to protect your interests first?
I think that if you want to be responsible to yourself, then you need to be responsible to the contractor. Does that make sense? If you do not plan to be fair, you're just going to hurt yourself, because the contractor is going to price in for everything that they cannot tell, they cannot foresee. And that's why I think, for me, I always feel that employers cannot put their own interest. I mean, of course, employers will definitely have to have regard for their own interests, right? But when you are the employer and you are looking at contractual forms and you're considering deviations from contractors, you need to take a very fair approach, because if you don't, at the end of the day, it's just going to hurt you. And actually, you will see a lot of employers in Singapore, especially with complex projects. What they do is, even though they're not on the NEC form, they do early contractor involvement, where but it's slightly different from what the NEC form says. But essentially, it's telling contractors, I'm gonna let the contract on this form. Comments, what do you think? And you have that dialogue with the contractors in a bid to find the best solution for that project.
Yeah, I think that one totally I agree, but I think yeah, probably sometimes it still take a lot of time, because now it's still quite ahead of time.
And that's why I have a lot of white hair right now, because of this.
Okay, thank you, panelists. I think that we conclude our session today. So thank you, everyone, and I think tomorrow we will start again here at 9 o'clock. So hopefully 9 or 8:30 or something. I think you are all on Hoover, you will know the certain time. So we hope that to see everyone again tomorrow morning. And thank you again for our panelists. I think let's take a photo. Oh, yeah. You